Thank you, Chair. We're now live on YouTube. I think you're on mute, Chair.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to East Devon District Council's Strategic Planning Committee for the 4th of October 2022. I'm your Chair, Councillor Paul Arnott. Based on a decision of Council to meet virtually until 31st October this year, may I remind both members and public attending or watching that the Council has delegated much of its decision-making power to our senior officers. We'll continue to adhere as closely as possible to the procedural roles detailed in the Constitution. In the event of a break, please bear with us. We'll try to reconnect, but if we can't after 15 minutes, we'll have to reconvene at another date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand, wait to be called. Any members of the public can view the agenda at eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of members here present. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself, Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Thank you. Vice Chair, Councillor Davey.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen. I have seen him. Mr. Allen, yeah.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I'm here, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
I think that was for me, Wendy. It broke up, but present, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward. Councillor Howe.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ingham.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Present, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Moulding.
Present, but I may have to leave at about midday. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, oh, have we got Councillor Rylance? I know she was having problems with her connection. Okay, and Councillor Skinner. Thank you. We are up for this morning's meeting, Chair. Back to you.
On mute, Chair.
Wendy, thank you. Agenda item 1, public speaking. I understand you have a statement to read out.
I do, yes. So the following statement is from Mr. Smith, a resident of Cranbrook. He'd like me to read out as follows. I'd like to draw committee's attention to paragraph 25 of the Planning Inspector's final report relating to the draft plan, which I believe raises questions in respect of unaddressed environmental and potential legal issues relating to the future development of Cranbrook. Paragraph 25 reads, the Council produced their habitats regulation assessment and appropriate assessment report in February 2019. The plan area is close to the Pebblebed Heaths and ex-estuary, where designations include sites of special scientific interest, special area of conservation, and in the case of ex-estuary, Ramsar sites. The report considers the Cranbrook development and its effects on these European protected sites. Residential development schemes which are in close proximity shall only be brought forward where they can demonstrate that suitable mitigation is made available to ensure that there is no likely significant effect upon them. Over a considerable period, members of this committee and cabinet have repeatedly highlighted sewage pollution issues, which at time of extreme weather events have negatively impacted upon the of Wimpole, Clyst St Mary and Clyst Honiton. Verified reports of sewage, Verified reports of raw sewage flooding in the streets at Wimpole, dead fish seen floating in a mixture of sewage and storm water at Clyst Honiton towards the ex-estuary before finally arriving at Clyst St Mary. There, in addition to street flooding, household toilets have been rendered unusable for up to 2 days' duration. Adverse impact upon the statutory protected ex-estuary wetlands, habitats and wildlife remains unstated. Latest data from South West Water for 2021 indicates 12 occasions when raw sewage has released from the Clistonnerton pumping station over a duration of 104.93 hours. This data confirms a 30% plus increase on 2020. The Met Office warns of future likelihood of a 7-fold increase in extreme weather events. South West Water acknowledges that climate change leading to more extreme weather events will further increase the sewage pollution problems in the areas mentioned. A resolution is further complicated due to the current agricultural and land management practices, which account for more than 40% of the pollutants entering the river watercourse. The company states that without huge infrastructure investment and major disruption, there is no option but to continue stormwater risk. While Cranbrook planners and developers are to be commended for measures already introduced to manage surface water runoffs, the situation remains that any additional development, as highlighted by the pending Tresby proposal for 1,000+ homes, will result in substantial daily additional domestic sewage entering a system which South West Water already acknowledged is not fit for purpose. Further, South West Water data for 2021 indicates that the main sewage treatment works at Countess Weir, which services and surrounding communities, also released stormwater on 72 combined occasions over a period of 230 hours plus, indication of capacity overwhelmed. Plus, plans for an additional sewage treatment works near Moss Hain has not been progressed by South West Water. Future growth at Cranbrook is indicated to involve more 4,000 additional homes. Questions. Number 1. Should councillors recommend approval of the Cranbrook plan in the light of acknowledge that the sewage system to which new homes/businesses will be connected is unfit for purpose, and any additional development will only exacerbate neighbouring community sewage problems? Finally, question 2, is there an individual or corporate liability associated with granting approval of the plan should it be later confirmed that damaging pollution has occurred to wetlands, habitat and wildlife currently protected by statutory instrument? End of the statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for all those thoughts, and thank you, Wendy, for reading them out. We don't have any other public speakers that I'm aware of, Wendy, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. In which case, coming back to you for apologies, please. And I've already just offered Councillor Hayward's apologies.
Oh, thank
You're on mute, Wendy. We're having a sort of mute off today.
Yeah, apologies. So as well as Councillor Hayward, I have Councillor Bailey and Councillor Ledger.
Thank you very much. And then we go to declarations of interest, again through you, please, Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
No declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blakey.
Yes, Wendy, under item 6, which is the Cranbrook DPD, I think I need to declare an effects NRI because as a member of Cranbrook Town Council, there could be an effect on the finances of that organisation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Wendy. I need to declare a DPI as I live on the border to an expansion zone of the Cranbrook plan, which is item 6, the Cranbrook DPD. So I believe I will have to leave the meeting for that item, please.
Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Yeah, I'm sitting contemplating this one because item 6, we are Cliff St Mary, or I represent Cliff St Mary. which is affected by the sewage outflow into our streets from Cranbrook. So I'm struggling, although I don't believe it's DPI or any of the others. I do have to point the fact out. I have concerns. Thank you.
So is that just for purposes?
So Wendy, you are breaking up terribly today, Wendy.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll turn my video off, hopefully. Is that any better?
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. So what was I saying? Was that just for information purposes?
I think it's best to keep it as information. I can't see that it relates to any of the other bits informal. So yeah, I'll just keep it for information. Thank you.
I think that's probably correct, Councillor Howe. It's Damien speaking, solicitor, so I think you're right in what you're saying.
Thank you, Damien.
Okay, Councillor Ingham.
Nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Same as Councillor Howe, problems with sewage, but we'll bring that up later. No, nothing else to declare, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moulding.
None.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
None to declare, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Councillor Rylance in the meeting?
Not yet, Wendy.
Okay, and Councillor Skinner, do we have Councillor Skinner? No, okay. That's all the, oh, no, sorry, bear with me. We have other members in the meeting. Does any other members need to declare an interest? Okay, we have Councillor Bloxham with a hand up.
Yeah, good morning, Wendy. Can I declare an effects NRI on item 6, please? Thank you.
Sorry, can you just elaborate why you're declaring that as an effects NRI?
Same reason as Councillor Blakey, it could affect the finances of Cranbrook Town Council.
Thank you. We see no other hands, so back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, members. Agenda item 4, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency. Agenda item 5, confidential or exempt items. There are none. Agenda item 6, the Cranbrook Plan Development Plan document, inspector's report and proposed plan adoption, which you can find on pages 3 to 142 of your agenda. And we have a report here from Ed Freeman.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So this report relates to the Cranbrook Plan Development Plan document, which members will recall has had a long gestation period between its production and submission for examination in August 2019, and then, well, just over 3 years through the examination process. But I'm pleased to say that we have now received a formal letter from the Planning Inspectorate confirming that the plan has been found sound, subject to a number of main modifications, and can now be adopted. The report that's before you includes a summary of the inspector's main findings at section 2 of the report. Hopefully the series of bullet points draws members' attention to the main points that have changed. Obviously, the plan has evolved gradually over the years, so to try and track through every single change is impossible, but we tried to highlight the main changes at paragraph 2.1 in the report. And then there are a number of main modifications at paragraph 2.2 that the inspector has recommended in order to make the plan sound. So a number of these relate to what was probably the main issue in terms of the examination process around the viability of the plan, and ensuring that the development proposed and the expansion areas were viable and deliverable. So you'll see a number of things there have changed in terms of requirements, in terms of infrastructure costs and delivery issues to try and address those issues, and a number of other matters that were raised through the examination process. There are also a number of minor additional modifications that aren't classed as main modifications, but are required really for clarification purposes and correction of factual errors in the report that we're also proposing before the plan is adopted. You'll see that under the legislation in section 4 of the report, there are essentially 3 options open to the council at this point. Option A is to accept the inspector's recommendations and to adopt the Cranbrook plan with the main modifications incorporated. B is to accept the inspector's recommendations and to adopt the Cranbrook plan with main modifications and additional modifications incorporated. And C is simply to withdraw the Cranbrook plan and not adopt it. So those are really the options in front of members today. Obviously, as officers and through the examination process, this plan has been rigidly tested in terms of its soundness and effectiveness in terms of delivering the further expansion of Cranbrook. And so the recommendation, well, it's twofold. Recommendation 1 is that members note the final report of the planning inspector on the examination of the Cranbrook plan, which is appended to the report, and also that the Cranbrook plan be incorporating the proposed main modifications, minor council additional modifications that I mentioned, and the changes to the Cranbrook plan policies map be recommended for adoption by council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ed, very much for that. May I ask, please, for any comments or questions from outside of the committee first, please, by means of raising your yellow hand. Councillor Peter Faithful, please.
Thank you, Chair. At the last strategic planning meeting, there was comments in relation to Fennerton and Wimple expansion about how it would impact Ottery Coleridge Medical Centre, and part of what is proposed at Cranbrook, I believe, is part of the Coleridge Medical Centre catchment area, and there's serious concern about Coleridge Medical Centre is already at capacity. What provision will be made to include all of Cranbrook into Cranbrook's own medical centre, rather than increasing the load on Coleridge Medical Centre in Ottery, because that is where it's supposed to be going at the moment, and the increased expansion of Cranbrook will have a direct impact on Ottery Coleridge Medical Centre. This is, we're right at capacity now. They're struggling like hell, and we can't cope with half of Cranbrook ending up in Ottery. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Faithful. Ed, I wonder do we have any helpful information on that? I know that's possibly not strictly speaking what the plan has been looking at, but in terms of medical capacity GPs, the expansion of Cranbrook and so forth, in relation to the Coleridge and Ottery.
Well, Chair, certainly the plans obviously looked at the delivery of infrastructure to support the expansion of Cranbrook, and part of that is obviously to try and deliver healthcare facilities within the town to meet the needs of its residents. So that is the long-term goal. We do have issues in the short term, of course, in terms of needs within the town until those facilities come online fundamentally. And that's, I think, the issue that's currently being experienced both at the Coleridge Medical Practice, but I believe also at Pinho in Exeter as well. Certainly, there are plans being developed to deliver the Health and Wellbeing Centre in the centre of Cranbrook and other medical facilities. And officers have set up a working group with the NHS, CCG, and other stakeholders to oversee that and ensure its delivery. I can't. Obviously, officers might be able to provide further details to Councillor Faithful if he needs them, but fundamentally the principle is to deliver medical facilities within the town that are fit for purpose and can meet the needs of the town without imposing on other practices outside of the town where possible. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just come back?
Please do, yeah.
It's just like we got with the sewage. We seem to be building houses before we've got the infrastructure, which is the thing we've been saying for ages. And it's like, it's all arse over tit all the way through. We should be having things put in place so that not just bang a load of houses up and somewhere down the line we're getting all this stuff put in place afterwards. after the shit's gone all down the rivers. And you know.
Okay, I think before we go back to chocolate cakes from the last meeting, let's put Councillor Faithful on mute and thank him sincerely for his contribution. It is a serious point, that, and I think we all take that. Things are, I think, cart before horse is possibly a more helpful metaphor. Councillor Kim Bloxham, please.
Thank you, Chair. As Mr. Freeman indicates, this plan has been a very long time in development, but we now have a plan for Cranbrook that's been found sound by the inspector. It might not be perfect. It may not contain everything we wanted. I do realise there's sewage issues as well to be resolved, but it's a plan that will deliver on the key elements which will see the town grow to around 8,000 homes. Cranbrook is central to the delivery of homes in East Devon, delivering between 50 and 60% of strategic development in the current local plan. You're now looking towards the next local plan, and there is now a perfect opportunity to deliver on the current one. I think it's time to get on with it, and therefore I ask that you recommend to Council the Cranbrook plan be adopted. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bloxham. Councillor Richard Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Faithful. We're always asked to look at the repercussions and where we need facilities and everything else, but the building always seems to come first, and all the answers about, you know, we're going to have some doctors in Cranbrook and this, that and the other, all these answers seem a little bit flaky to me. They don't really seem to hit home. Now, last week in Wimpole, we had a bit of a heavy shower of rain. The drain covers in the middle of the village lifted up. The middle of the village was covered in sewage. Kids were coming home from school thinking, this is fun, we've got all these puddles, let's kick it over each other. And they're kicking sewage over each other. I mean, how long have we got to go down this route of waiting to get the infrastructure put in place before we stop and take notice that before any more building takes place, we need the infrastructure. We know there's a lack of medical facilities. We know there's a lack of sewage treatment. I mean, this week, South West Water have been fined a massive sum because of sewage leaks and so on. I mean, we're just going backwards, and we can't afford to allow any further development in the west end of East Devon until these things get looked at and get sorted properly. It's no good just saying, oh, yes, well, there's officers who know this and officers who know that, and there are things going forward. I just despair because it happens all the time, and we've seen it with Cranbrook in the past. Build all the houses and then look at the infrastructure. All right, we're getting a town centre built now, but that doesn't cover the answers to all the other problems associated with the building of new houses. And we owe it to the people that live there to look after them, as well as people in surrounding areas. I just don't know where to go with this, because I don't think it's been looked at properly. I know the plan is sound. The plan is sound, but the infrastructure isn't, and the supply of the infrastructure isn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. So I don't think anybody would disagree with any of that. As I said, cart before horse. It's the planning disease, isn't it? It's not the officer's fault. It's not our fault. And it starts way back in history. I just need to remind members, if I can, that this agenda item is about the Cranbrook plan, okay, and about the two recommendations we've got there, rather than a general debate, please, on how the planning system works, because there's a danger, there's a risk, isn't there, that could get political, which I don't really want. Councillor Mike Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. The key problem with the Cranbrook plan, as with the main local plan under development, is the infrastructure. And so on the one hand, we can recommend approval of the document in front of us on the basis that the inspector has approved it. And the inspector has decided, in his wisdom, or her wisdom, I don't know which, to say that this is a sustainable plan. We are there in a cleft stick because we know on the ground that implications of adopting the plan mean that it isn't sustainable for the area. And we have to look very carefully at this particular decision. And at present, I think that we have every reason to turn to South West Water and say in both cases that we cannot meet government requirements unless there is a new pumping station appropriately developed. And I would propose, therefore, that we pass the Cranbrook Development Plan document subject to further discussions on infrastructure with South West Water. That's my proposal, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'm not going to accept that proposal because, as you can see, the recommendations that are there do not allow us to bring in, I could say, subject to further discussions with the CCG, with the RD&E or whatever. We have got a series of choices laid out today in order to get this plan along. Now, members will know, I hope...
Chair, do you have...
Sorry, I am still speaking, Councillor Allen, if you can just keep your discipline in this meeting. Unlike the last one.
May.
I am still speaking, Councillor Allen.
I'm waiting.
Okay. Oh, make your point. Make your point.
This committee is perfectly able to put forward proposals, and I'm afraid, Chair, that you don't have the right to turn down proper proposals if I have a seconder. Thank you.
Well, your proposal is ultra vires as far as I can see, because you're trying to amend the recommendation to something which is just something perhaps we'd all like to do, but doesn't actually flow from the report in front of us. I've just made the point. It may not have been heard by Councillor Allen. We could easily say, subject to discussions with the CCG, couldn't we? Or with the RD&E, or with highways, or anything like that. But that is not what today's meeting is about, Councillor Allen. Do you see the point?
You're incorrect in law.
Okay. So, Councillor Howe, please.
Thank you, Chair. And unfortunately, I'm going to probably upset you as well, because actually, I will support and second Councillor Allen's proposal. And I will explain this because it doesn't then encompass healthcare and everything else. Because healthcare and everything else was known about, has been consulted about, we're not happy about, don't get me wrong. And if we take Cranbrook in particular, which is obviously Ottery, they can consult to redraw their boundaries, which is what pinhole surgery is, funnily enough, doing. So healthcare is known about, the size of the quantum, the development is known about, the NHS knows about it and has to fix it. We can't do anything about that. They've accepted it and that's been gone through. The issue I have, and it is South West Water, is because our mitigation for done in 2019 for this, looked at the triple SI, the ex-estuary and everything else and the possible pollution outcomes. The world has moved on, or this area has moved on tremendously since then. Also, since the public hearings were done for this Cranbrook expansion. The facts were not known then that are known now, that we are regularly polluting the River Clyst and the ex-estuary. And it is getting worse and worse as we go. Now, the Cranbrook expansion is essential. We do have to get on with it. And we shouldn't just kick it into the long grass. But at the same time, we have to fix the one issue that is outstanding, that is wrong factually in this report and needs updating. And that is the mitigation needed for the triple SI, because that has moved on tremendously since this was done. And that is the role and responsibility, in my understanding, of this council. So we have to come up with a plan. We have to look at that plan, because otherwise we are polluting a European site of special scientific interest. That is critical. We shouldn't be doing that. And that's ignoring the fact we're polluting certain communities, my own included, if you get my meaning. And the public speaker, Wendy kindly wrote out, claimed 2 days. Well, actually, the last pollution event we had here in Clifton Mary, we had residents not able to use their toilets in their home for 10 days. 10 days. We had Portaloos come in. Now, this is directly downline from the Cranbrook expansion, Cranbrook Hole, in fact. We have to get this fixed. It has to be sorted. South West Water to blame. And as much as I know you're not going to like it, I have to support Councillor Allen's proposal purely on that one scenario.
Councillor, I do understand what you're saying. We all understand exactly what you and Councillor Allen are driving at. But what Councillor Allen said was that we pass it subject to. Okay? Now, what Councillor Bloxham is saying is, notwithstanding it's not ideal, please, let's get on with it. Those are two very different things. Can I ask some legal advice, please, from officers present? What would be the effect of us passing a motion which made this subject to?
Henry, would you like me to speak on this, or would you like to come in?
That's fine, Damien. Yep, you crack on.
Right. So basically, I think we need to get Ed's view on delaying this. I mean, my thoughts would that we move to adoption, and if further work's required, then obviously that can follow at that stage. We want to know on what basis in local plan terms can the local plan authority control South West Water's actions.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So, I mean, obviously, there's been ongoing discussions with South West Water and consultation with them through the whole plan process. And as far as I'm aware, they have not raised any objections to the plan to date. And obviously, those consultations are ongoing because we obviously have a number of applications in for the individual expansion areas, and they will be consulted on those applications as well. Ultimately, the responsibility for delivering this infrastructure is with South West Water. Ultimately, the way they fund infrastructure is through connection charges from developers. It's not funded through the planning process. So fundamentally, we're a bit of a third party in all of this. I do acknowledge that there are obviously issues and they do need to be resolved, but I don't think delaying adoption of the Cranbrook plan is going to resolve those issues fundamentally. It is part of an ongoing discussion about delivery of infrastructure to support the town, which is happening with a number of infrastructure providers and stakeholders across a range of issues. In reality, infrastructure is not, unfortunately, delivered in advance of development. That's not a problem to East Devon, that's a common problem everywhere with funding of infrastructure. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to resolve those issues as East Devon District Council. But I think we do need to move ahead and adopt the Cranbrook plan and continue to work with South West Water to address these issues. As it says in the report, you effectively have three options as at paragraph 4.1 to accept the inspector's recommendations and adopt the plan with the main modifications, to do so with the additional modifications, or to not adopt it. And then, you know, government guidance also is very clear that we should move to adoption quickly. So delaying adoption to resolve something that is an ongoing issue with South West Water, that will be an ongoing issue, I suspect, for many months, if not years, to my mind, does not comply with the legislation or with planning practice guidance and the options available to members today.
Thank you, Ed. Can I come back to Councillor Mike Howe, please? Mike, are you happy to share? I mean, there have been, as I understand it, I've only been part of one of the meetings, I think, but there've been a number of meetings, haven't there, between South West Water and Simon Jupp and yourself and so forth. So it's not as if this hasn't been and isn't being raised. Is that fair to say?
You are absolutely right. Everyone has been in the rooms, and at South West Water, and I'm not doubting a word for what Mr. Freeman has just said, but what South West Water seems to be saying to East Devon is very different to what they are saying to their MP or the MP for the area and us local councillors, because they frequently claim during storm surges and everything else, which is what we're talking about, which are getting more often, the Blue Ball pumping station, which is the one connection all of the west end of East Devon has goes over capacity, and so ends up backing up Clyst St Mary, Clyst Hunterton, and other areas then pump into the River Clyst and the River Exe. So what South West Water are claiming to our officers is just wrong. They are open with the residents because the residents have the facts in front of them. And subject to Mr. Freeman, and I'm looking at the last scrutiny meeting that actually got cut short because we do have roles, and I need to challenge Mr. Freeman on this because the only chance we have of our roles being there is when we do a master plan or when we do a local plan. And that is, we need to make sure that the infrastructure is there. Mr. Freeman himself has employed consultants to verify what South West Water are claiming, which we all know to be inaccurate. Now, if we had that report in front of us, we could be in a whole different view. And don't get me wrong, I know exactly what I'm saying, and I'm pulling my hair out with it because the implications of housing numbers and everything else, Cranbrook has to succeed. But at the same time, we should not be polluting, actively forcing pollution into our rivers more than they are now. And that is exactly what we will do if we progress with this without South West Water making commitments as to what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. At present, unfortunately, I've got to disagree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Ed, can I just ask you, what is the timescale for the likely rollout of any future housing that comes if we adopt the development plan document today? What are we looking at sort of over the next, couple of years and so forth? In other words, is there time to sort this out with South West Water through perhaps bringing them to scrutiny again?
Well, I mean, in terms of the total of development planned at Cranbrook through the Cranbrook plan, you're probably talking around 15 years to build out everything that's in the plan fundamentally. So I understand the concerns about the cumulative impact of all of that, and obviously further growth we're now looking at through the local plan. And that's why I say we obviously need to have an ongoing discussion with South West Water about their infrastructure, the demands that this development is going to place on that infrastructure and how those issues are resolved. But as I say, fundamentally, the planning process cannot fund South West Water's infrastructure. It's funded through connection charges and through their business plans and processes. So fundamentally, we are reliant on them. We are doing the water cycle study, which Councillor Howe refers to. We should have the results of that later in the year. But fundamentally, the Cranbrook plan predates all of that. We've consulted with South West Water. It's been through the examination process. It's been found sound. So I don't see that these issues should prevent us from adopting the Cranbrook plan. They are, of course, issues that we need to continue to discuss with South West Water and try and resolve as growth comes forward at Cranbrook and elsewhere to ensure that the infrastructure is in place in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ed. I mean, my view would be that precisely because you have adopted the plan, rather than floating around in space, you've actually then got some political welly to go back to the local politicians and South West Water and say, right, well, we've done what we're meant to do. So how are you going to make sure that as this is rolled out over the next 15 years, we don't have these continuing problems with sewage, or how it's rolled out over the next 2 years, say? Can I come to Mr. Gordon-Lennox, please, Henry, who has his hand up?
Thank you, Chair. So I think you've actually just hit it on the head at the end there, which is it's the timing, really. What is the right point to be dealing with these issues? This is a plan that sets a long-term programme for development. It's the individual applications as they come through within Cranbrook that effectively allows the issue of the connection and the dealing with the sewage to be dealt with. Ed's made the point that you have got an inspector's view on this being sound. The guidance is quite clear that you should move to adoption. There's a choice then to be made about what adoption, whether it's main mods plus or don't. But that's effectively your choice. And the issue of dealing with these concerns is dealt with down the line when those applications come on. I was going to say on stream, that's probably not the right choice of word. When they come online, that's when these matters get dealt with. And that's really what you're saying. That would be my advice to the committee.
Henry, can I also just ask you, please, for some help on Councillor Allen's terminology about subject to? I mean, in essence, that would be to, on the one hand, approve, but on the other hand, block, in my layman's perception.
Yeah, it's what are you actually asking? I mean, I get the impression that what was being sought is that effectively it's held in abeyance pending. So this committee will agree to move it forward, but effectively it's held. And I don't think from what Ed and Damien were saying, that's going to be the right approach, because really we should be moving to adopt. Now, I take the point that you can do further work down the line, but that really then flows into the applications, the individual applications as they come online.
Chair, I'm not trying to block anything.
Sorry, Councillor Howe. Councillor Howe, you're not. Councillor Allen, it isn't your turn to speak. So just wait your turn, please. You're in third place now. One more interruption, and I'll ask you to leave the meeting. Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thank you for letting me in. I had a different point on the report, and usually what I'd say to you, Chair, is bring me back after those speakers, because I know we're in the middle of a debate about this specific issue, but I have to go to a meeting at 10:30, so I don't think I'll get the opportunity, another meeting. It's a minor point, but I do think it's important.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt. It's Damien, the solicitor. I might be incorrect. Did you arrive at the meeting slightly late? Have we heard about whether you've got any interest?
Yeah, no declarations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just thought I'd just better clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So
Thanks, Damien. We'll do all
forward.
the other members who've arrived in a minute after council.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
So the foreword to the document, I just think this isn't a political point, but I don't think it's appropriate the chair of the council, you actually may disagree, leader, but I don't think the chair of the council should be writing the foreword to a strategic document. He is the impartial chair. This Cranbrook plan has been delivered by you as chair of this committee, your predecessor. I actually think, given the past on this issue, it's in a bit of poor taste. That's my own personal opinion, and I don't understand why the chair of council has been asked to write a foreword. I understand if it was a different issue on planting trees in memory of the Queen or something, which is more of a civic matter, but this is a very strategic thing, and I don't understand why the foreword has been written by the chair of council. As I say, you may disagree, but I feel quite strongly about that, regardless of who's in power. I just don't understand that at all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Miller. Let's park that point. I hadn't noticed that, to be honest, but I would say that let's have a look at what happened last time. Maybe that may help. Yeah, okay, Councillor Allen then.
Thank you, Chair. I'm honestly not trying to block this. I want to get to a stage where we approve this plan, and I'm inviting the right words to make sure that we can proceed with due attention and concern and action in regard of South West Water. Now, I'm happy to take any modifications to that proposal that I made, and I would seek what everybody is trying to do, which is to make sure that this report is brought up to date with the knowledge that South West Water is simply not doing its job and has already been fined because it's not doing its job, and we cannot proceed with the development willy-nilly. We have to put something into our deliberations which says that if we go ahead with this as it stands, we will create even more pollution than already exists, and I can't see how that is sustainable. So anything you choose, Chair, or anyone else in the meeting, to modify what I've said so that we can get approval of this proposed plan and also enforce South West Water's cooperation, I would love it. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be as constructive as possible.
Okay, Councillor Allen, perhaps if we have a third recommendation, that we note the Strategic Planning Committee's request for more serious engagement with South West Water in relation to Cranbrook. Something like that. Shall I read that again? I mean, I've just literally written it down. It would be, you can see you've got the two recommendations, 1 and 2, which are on page 3. And then perhaps we add a third one, which is that we note the Strategic Planning Committee's request for more engagement with South West Water, or a more heavy term engagement. I don't know.
Yes, I mean, I can see what you're trying to do, and we're trying to cooperate here. I don't think that is a strong enough statement. Could we put something like the Strategic Planning Committee expresses its serious concerns that this issue of South West Water's infrastructure needs attention?
That's very good. I would be very happy to accept that as a third recommendation. If anybody can remember, young minds like Damien, what Councillor Allen has just said, and maybe help us with that. In fact, I mean, Councillor Allen, can I invite you to withdraw your last one and propose that one as a recommendation 3?
Yes, I'm quite happy if Mike Howe is.
Councillor Howe?
Before I say yes or no, can I query what Mr. Gordon Lennox has said? Because I have to, and I think this is the first time I've ever queried Mr. Gordon Lennox's advice. And this is based on the report done by Mr. Freeman to strategic planning but a month ago. Because what Mr. Gordon Lennox, I think, said is this is basically a local plan, small local plan, and Southwest Water's issues should be dealt with at planning level when you're talking about the bricks and mortar. The National Policy Statement for Wastewater, published in 2012, says the opposite. Any wastewater problems and water problems, infrastructure, has to be dealt with at local plan, master planning level. And the issues highlighted are also picked up in the PPG in relation to local plan production, which is where we are at present on this small area. In it, and the paragraph from Mr. Freeman is wastewater. This could involve considering the sufficiency and capacity of wastewater infrastructure, considering circumstances where private treatment works may be accepted, considering the capacity of the environment to receive the effluent from development without preventing statutory objectives being met. And that's the fundamental issue. If we agree this, we are breaking those statutory objectives that we have on the SSSI. We know we're going to break them because Southwest Waters don't care two hoots. And all the argument about who's going to pay for it is irrelevant. And everyone's right. Mr. Freeman's definitely right. The development should not pay for the treatments, the work that Southwest Water needs to do, particularly because the problems exist now, today. They're going to get worse by putting more sewage connections on, but they happen today. Southwest Water has to do its infrastructure, and part of the reason it's been fined yesterday, I think it was, is because they're not doing the work they need to do. So you get where I'm coming from, and I just would like to clear that up with Mr. Gordon Lennox and Mr. Freeman as to whether we can do what they're suggesting and what your proposal is. I'd love to do it, but I think we need some provisos to say, actually, we hit our MPs over the head and say, actually, we can't build these until this is sorted, or this is, at least the plan is done, and it's not by Southwest Water yet. So I'd like some comments on that, please.
Can I, before we come to Henry, come back to you, Mike, as well? So let's say you were chair of planning and a proposal came in the next month for 250 homes within this area. And you were sitting on the committee or chair of committee or whatever, and you put the arguments you just put. Would you expect our planning committee to pass that development if it knew that the sewage wastewater infrastructure was flawed?
If Mr. Freeman will back me up on this, I'm sure, if it is in our local plan and already being decided, then they would have no choice but to accept it. And we've had that in the past in Limpston and other areas. It's frequent. You cannot refuse a planning application like that once it's already allocated. And this is the issue we have here.
Thanks, Mike. Right, Henry, please.
Yeah, so, and I appreciate why Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Howard taking the position that they are, in a sense, because of the acute difficulties that those areas are facing. But the wider issue is that you have got a plan that has been considered by an inspector and found to be sound, having had South West Water engaged in the process. So you're kind of caught twixt and between. So I think the difficulty is that there's going to have to be something that's dealt with further down the line than now because of the circumstances we're in, or the council then takes a significant risk, again contrary to policy, of saying that actually we're not going to adopt this. We don't consider it to be safe or sound, notwithstanding that's what an inspector has considered with those modifications, obviously, and that presents a significant risk, doesn't it? So if the advice is you've got a position that may be less than ideal, reflecting what you've said, but you've got South West Water engaged in a process and a plan that an inspector has said is sound, and that's why the advice is that you should progress with it, and things can be dealt with further down the line. Things are never ideal, but there is a significant risk to the council of saying we're not going to adopt this now.
Okay, thanks, Henry. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. As portfolio holder for Coast, Country and Environment, I've been involved in a lot of discussions with South West Water and with Ed on issues with the sewage issue. And I agree with him that no, South West Water has been a consultee to this local plan. They haven't objected to it. So as they're the consultee on sewage, we have to basically agree with them and go with the plan. It's we have got two emergencies here. We've got a pollution emergency and we've got a housing emergency. The housing emergency, I think, trumps the sewage emergency. As chair of habitat mitigation for the ex-estuary, we have been discussing the issue of sewage on the Ex, but it's not in our remit. So no, whose remit is it? This issue that affects Cliff St Mary and all of that area over the West End, it's the same that affects Timbridge and the same that accepts Exeter. Both the city and Timbridge are building massive amounts of houses, more population, and it all goes to Countess Weir. South West Water know there's an issue at Countess Weir. They can't expand because it's surrounding the site, it's SSSI, and they have identified that they need to replace or have a second site to counteract the problems that they've got at Countess Weir, which would provide enough headroom for the expansion for Timbridge, Exeter and ourselves. Rather than having ourselves talk to South West Water, I would suggest that we get together with Timbridge and Exeter because they'll be in the same boat. That's where I am with this issue. I think we've got to go ahead with now building these houses. We're told that we have to build these houses, and we have to then work out with South West Water how they're going to solve it, and hopefully the two will go together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Blakey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Lots of valid points have been made this morning. I'd like to start, if I may, with a question to Mr. Freeman. This is just a technical thing. You mentioned on the report, page 8.3.3, that track changes have been marked in green text. I couldn't find any green text that was telling me about track changes. That didn't make any difference to the way that it read, but just from a reading point of view, it was difficult to see where changes have been made, unless you can point me in the direction of an example that I've not been able to see or have missed. We can deal with that later. As far as the South West Water position is concerned, I completely agree that their performance has been beyond woeful, and that's been evidenced by the fine that was levied against them a couple of days ago. I think that made them the third or fourth worst in the country, and that was in a bunch of pretty poor performers. But we are not in a position to force their hand. We cannot tell them what they need to do. This is a matter for, as Councillor Young has suggested, lobbying with other authorities, and particularly, I think, with our MPs, to get South West Water to do the things that they really should be doing, because it is their responsibility to keep our environment as clean as it can be, certainly as regards the water business. So, to the point of the recommendation today, which is quite simple, in fact, to note the report and to approve its progress to full council. So, if that is what we are considering, then for me, yes, we should answer yes to both those points. And as Councillor Bloxham said, please, let's get on with it. This has been years and years in the making. It is not now the time to hold it up any further. Thank you, Chair.
Kevin, are you proposing those two? And if you are, would you be happy also with the a third recommendation, as was discussed, about, I can't remember the wording, but basically something quite tough about South West Water?
Yes to all three, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Anybody happy to second Councillor Blakey there?
I will, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Okay, right. Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't wish to drag this thing on, but we're being pushed to adopt this plan as soon as possible, and I can understand that. As Councillor Howe already mentioned, the problem is already there. It's not down to the next lot of houses that are going to be built. The problem is already there. When I tried to raise the matter at scrutiny, and I tabled a question to South West Water, I wasn't allowed to answer the question because Mr. Freeman answered it for them. Now, there's a bit of a cavalier attitude by South West Water. They charge the highest water rates in the country, and they're not giving us anything at the moment. So what's going to make them do it in the future? I mean, I went down to Exmouth yesterday to the Mare, which is an area where people go for picnics and so on. The two main drains on the Mare flood with sewage all the time, and all they've done is surround it with wire netting. I mean, you know, it's a farcical, really. You know, you couldn't write it. But we need to get tough, and I agree with Councillor Allen's proposal, or part of his proposal, that we need to get tough with South West Water and get them to do what they're supposed to do. And if not, then we get government to turn them out and get another company in who will do it. Thank you.
Well, with this government, anything's possible. We might have them out by the end of the week. I would suggest that Councillor Young has made a very helpful contribution because he has, in his portfolio role, had some engagement with this, as has Mike, as has Mr. Chuck, the MP, as well. And Councillor Young is suggesting that we really ought to try and find some common cause with Timbridge and Exeter here, because it does ultimately involve, at the moment, the overloaded Countess Weir sewage station and the difficulties of building something new. We clearly have to have something new. It's a question of how we bring that forward. But I do think it's important democratically to make sure that that issue, which is incredibly serious, doesn't block what the Cranbrook members are asking us to do, in effect. Councillor Skinner, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I think I came in late and I need to just do my declaration of interest with
Can you do it just if we finish this item?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Well, I got nothing to declare anyway, so that's fine. So just clear that one. And really, I'm picking up on lots of this stuff. And it's all, I'm sure it's already been said, but it's all chicken and egg, isn't it? I think actually, Chair, and I heard the advice from both Mr. Freeman and from Henry Gordon Lennox, and actually what Councillor Allen was suggesting is by having a subject to, and I know we're sort of trying to move on from that, but in actual fact, what that does, it does apply pressure, Chair. It does apply pressure by saying, we understand where we are, we're progressing with our plan, we accept the numbers that's in the plan, we're accepting the area, but I have an awful lot of sympathy for Councillor Howe and others around in that area whereby sewage is coming up to levels of wherever they are. Not having toilets for 10 days in 2022 in the UK, unbelievable. It really is. So we need to sort of get to a place whereby I'm thinking of some wording and trying to think of some wording, and I'm sure we're all on the same boat here, that we all want to drive this. We all got the numbers. We're all trying to make sure we're delivering our numbers and doing it within the timescales. But the issues that are facing us, we need to be taken seriously. And it seems to me we're getting conflicting reports from what's said to one and what's said to another, from picking up on what Councillor Howe was saying and picking up on the wording that he has. He's been much closer to this than I, and he wouldn't he been in his patch. In some way, that the development is, we accept it in the way that we go forward, but in some way we're applying some pressure to say, but for this to happen is South West Water would need to. And it's that sort of approach in the best way that we can come within our ability to do that at a local planning level. But Councillor Howe makes a very, very strong point. And the strong point that he makes is that when you're starting out on your strategic planning, going forward with your strategic plan, and the caveats that fit around that, is we are going to be breaking our very own policies around making sure that we're definitely keeping people safe. And that to me is really strong. Councillor Young, if I may say what Councillor Young said, I get where he comes from. What comes first? Is it the housing crisis, or is it the pollution crisis? Well, of course, none of us want either. But we are to a point whereby I understand the need to press this forward. But in some way, it's mentoring the words, Chairs, for you, that applies pressure, whether it be, I'm not sure it's a government issue. South West Water just need to ramp up it and sort themselves out. What I do find interesting with that is that the same issues are with Teambridge, we've just heard, and the same issues from Councillor Young was saying, and the same issues are with Exeter. And what a shame we weren't more, when we talk about working together, we were working together, the guest process, that it'd be, we might have had more power. Would it be more power to arm, working with the other authorities? And that's a question, that's a serious question. Is it more power with us, working with those other two authorities that have got the same issues that we've got, in applying that pressure to to South West Water? And that's a question I would like to feel whether or not we could field that one here, Chair, at this moment in time, because if that is the case, then how do we garner what we're doing here now to ensure that the wording that we use can be used? I mean, we're all trying to get to a place.
Councillor Skinner, have you heard that we are suggesting a third recommendation to that effect?
Well, you forgot what it was. I need you to say it. What is it?
Well, Councillor Councillor Allen strengthened it. It was something along the lines of that we note the Strategic Planning Committee's requests for serious engagement with South West Water, etc., etc., etc. So something, and Mike then improved that greatly. So it's something like that, and that allows us to move forward.
So how are we going to engage with those words and that wording now in what we're going to do and put in our proposal forward? That's the point. That's the issue I'm getting to. How are we going to do that?
By having a third recommendation to the two that are there at the moment, being. So
shall we get that strengthened up then, Chair, and then we know what it is, and then we know what we're going for?
Yes, well, I was hoping that Damien might help us with that, but I think he crashed off air at exactly the moment that I don't know. Damien, did you hear any of the third recommendation discussion?
I'm afraid I didn't, Chair. I did crash just as Councillor Miller had finished speaking, I'm afraid. I've got the general gist that basically what I understand is we're looking at the two proposals as recommended by Ed in his report, and then now we're looking at trying to agree some wording. We may need to go back initially I think then to Councillor Allen to see what he was thinking with regards to this wording somewhere along the lines of that strategic planning committee requests some serious engagement with South West Water. I'm not quite sure what exactly the proposal
it was something
is
along
in
those
respect
lines.
of that wording.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't hear
what
what was said about it.
Well, but Councillor Allen, can you? I mean, I'm very happy indeed to accept any recommendation along those lines that is firmed up even more. Mike, have you got? Would you like to see?
Yeah.
Well, Chair,
I'm a bit stuck at this moment because Mike Howe was just trying to come in. He's raised a legal issue, which is a critical one, and I don't know how to resolve it. I'm desperately trying to achieve what you, Chair, and Ed Freeman want, but we're in a situation where if we say yes to this, then legally we're endorsing pollution, and I don't know how to get around that. And I've asked for the suitable form of words, and maybe Mike Howe can come up with a suitable form of words. We need to come up with something that actually doesn't break the law.
Okay, thank you. The first thing, as a general note, is it would have been very helpful if the Conservative group had raised this before in the middle of this meeting.
It wasn't the Conservative group.
Okay, at any point this could have been raised. So at the moment, it must surely be clear that if you're going to die in a ditch about the South West Water thing, I'm not saying you, Councillor Allen, then what that does is effectively negate the recommendations. So we do need to find a third sensible compromise, note our serious concerns. Councillor Howe, I'll come back to you.
Thank you. And I don't know whether I'm going to help or not, but I'm going to try because I do want to move this on. But I'm out of my comfort zone in this proposal.
Councillor Howe, if I can just help you, what Councillor Allen actually said was that the Strategic Planning Committee expresses serious concerns about the issue of South West Water infrastructure and that needs immediate attention.
Yeah, no, in my head is thinking slightly separately, but I don't have a real problem with those words. Where I was going to go and try and go with and look to legal and Mr. Freeman is change those words to, instead of just serious concern and everything else, to firm commitments or planned evidence of South West Water improvements before first occupation of this area. So it kicks it down the touch to the building zone. You get my meaning? They've got a long way to go, and it gives us and South West Water chance, but gives you a fine line before the actual problem exists. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes a lot of sense, but I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. The problem is with the inspector, except that.
Well, that's what I don't know. Yeah.
Well, quite. So, Henry or Ed, take your choice. Whoever would like to comment on that.
Well, Chair, I think, as you said earlier, I think there are two different issues here. Fundamentally, the Cranbrook plan has been through the process and has been found sound. I think the issue that's being raised is obviously the plan's taken a number of years to go through that process, and the views of South West Water were sought a while back. I don't know exactly when. So the question is, has the situation changed? And that will be tested through the application process on the individual applications when we will consult with them. And if the circumstances has changed, then I'm sure I would expect them to alert us to that through the application process. And coming back to Councillor Howe's point about the process, I don't see a problem with that. If things have moved on, there would be a problem if we were contradicting things that have come forward through the Cranbrook plan process. But if things have moved on and a different view now needs to be taken, then we can take a view on the applications, we can consult with South West Water, and if there's an objection, then clearly we need to resolve that before consent is granted. So I think there are two different processes here. As I said earlier, I don't see a reason not to adopt the Cranbrook plan. In fact, I think it creates a whole heap of problems if we don't. For one thing, it creates uncertainty in terms of, is that development going to go ahead from South West Water's perspective? Do they need to plan for that? hopefully they already are, but if we don't proceed with the plan, doesn't it raise a question mark potentially? You also have a report coming up about our 5-year housing land supply. So not adopting the Cranbrook plan then causes doubt about, are these sites coming forward within the Cranbrook plan? Because we need them to supplement our housing land supply and help to address those issues. So I think not adopting the plan doesn't help anybody. But I do agree fundamentally that we have a significant issue here in terms of South West Water's infrastructure and the terrible issues that are being experienced by some of our communities that need to be addressed. And very happy to work with councillors, with South West Water, and I would suggest with Exeter City Council and Teignbridge District Council to put pressure on South West Water to address those issues. But I do see it as a separate thing from adoption of the Cranbrook plan. Hopefully that helps, Chair.
Well, I think it does help, and I don't think, much as I admire Councillor Howe's effort to do this before first occupation, I can see what Ed is saying, that doesn't sit with what we're being asked to do today, unfortunately. Something that Councillor Howe said has just been sort of implicitly disagreed with by you, Ed, just now, because I did say, what would happen if, hypothetical, couple of years' time, couple of hundred houses come forward, and every single member of that planning committee has done a site visit, and they can see the sewage coming through the manholes, and that planning committee is minded to vote against that application because it's not, it's not safe, it's not environmentally safe. Even perhaps if South West Water have said that it is, does that then get trumped by the fact that we've adopted the Cranbrook development plan today? In other words, has the planning committee got any powers if it's self-evident that a development isn't sustainable?
Well, what I was going to say is, I mean, fundamentally, the application process is the backstop, fundamentally. So we've sought to address these issues with South West Water through the Cranbrook plan making process, and no issues have been raised. But they will be consulted on planning applications, and we need to take a view on those applications. To date, I mean, I understand they've been consulted on the Tradesbury expansion area and haven't objected to that, which is a current application, and they're still saying that they can accommodate that. Obviously, if those applications come before planning committee and planning committee want to make a decision on these issues, then we'll need to be mindful of how sound those decisions are if South West Water are advising that there isn't an issue. And I think my advice would be, if that eventuality arose, that it would be difficult to refuse planning permission on sewage capacity issues if South West Water are not objecting. But equally, we could go and get some independent advice on those issues. We are also doing this water cycle study, which will give us independent advice on these issues from a strategic level. So that will be further information coming forward. But ultimately, you're right, Chair. The application process is the backstop, and if members are not happy, then they can still refuse planning permission on those issues. We just need to be mindful of having an evidence-based approach to doing that. Which obviously heavily relies at the moment on advice from South West Water.
Thanks, Ed. Councillor Davey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I totally agree that we need to continue putting pressure on South West Water, and it would be lovely if we could also get the developers putting pressure on them. But I don't think we should kind of hold ourselves hostage to South West Water, because that's effectively what we're doing. We're saying, well, we won't adopt our plan until South West Water can demonstrate adequate infrastructure. And so we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot there. In any case, discussion with South West Water has been ongoing, so I don't think that would have particularly strengthened our hand in the motion. We need developers putting pressure on South West Water. We just need a queue of them at their door as well, along with councils, all saying you have got to solve this problem. And I don't know if it would help, but if we were to make recommendation 3, something like, and I'd appreciate Ed and possibly legal guidance on this, that individual applications would only be accepted if South West Water could demonstrate appropriate infrastructure to cope with the increase in sewage. And I don't know if that would be valid.
So that would be, so you're suggesting that, Ollie, as a sort of a flow on from the sentence we've already got about expressing serious concerns.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anybody in legal thinking that we might be able to do that? Damien?
Chairman, yeah, if this can help. I mean, I think what would maybe better with regards to the wording is to say something along the lines that the Strategic Planning Committee expressed serious concerns about the issue of the South West water infrastructure, and that there's a clear expectation that EDDC with Exeter City Council and Cambridge District Council will work with South West Water to obtain confirmation on any applications coming forward as part of the Cranbrook DPD will be able to deal with wastewater from environmental and sustainability grounds. Look at it along that line. So we're not going quite as specific as what was said by Councillor Ollie. We are, obviously as a committee, you will then be expressing that you've got concerns with regards to sewage. But I mean, fundamentally, what you're being asked to look at here today is whether or not you're happy to accept the comments and the modifications that have been proposed to the plan by the inspector. The inspector's examined it. He's come back with the modifications proposed, and your options are to accept those modifications or not. So, as I say, I think everybody's of the view that it is important not to forget about these issues with regards to South West Water, but I do see them as somewhat separate issues. So, as I said, that word and I've then suggested I have to hold my hand up, but assisted by Henry. I think that would solve, hopefully, the concerns of members.
Could you read that out for us again? This is a potential recommendation 3 to add to the 2 that we have already got. Oh, Damien, you've frozen. Although, by the miracle of your recent confession, we know that Henry must have that on his screen as well.
So I didn't get the first bit, but it was that the strategic planning the strategic planning expressed serious concerns, and also a clear expectation that EDDC with Exeter City Council and Cambridge District Council will work with South West Water to obtain confirmation that any applications coming forward as part of the Cranbrook DPD will be able to deal with wastewater from environmental and sustainability grounds.
Okay, and I think the first bit, strategic planning, serious concerns.
I think Henry's a genius.
Yes, Councillor Allen, help us, go on.
I think Henry's a genius. It encapsulated what we're trying to do. The question remains with Mike Howe's comments is it legal? Because I'm happy with what Henry suggested, subject to a check on whether or not we're breaching the law in respect of what Mike Howe has raised.
Well, with regard to the wording,
this is a case.
Please, yep. Who was that? Somebody said this is a case.
Don't know.
But if I could come back to Councillor Allen's point, I don't think we're breaking the law, but it is the way the law works, if that makes sense. So I'm as best as I'm going to be, and everyone knows my opinion, I can go along with that suggestion. I'll put it under duress, if you get my meaning. How about that?
Okay. So we thank you, Councillor Howe.
I
we
agree,
have 3
yeah.
recommendations we could vote on, and Councillor Lawrence, I think, is also under duress. So I'd quite like to go to a vote on this. We do have a lot of other business today, and forgive me, we've got if Councillor Moulding, obviously, if you've got a new point to make, delighted to hear it. Thank you.
Well, I first of all wanted to comment on Ed Freeman's telling us that during the process of the consultation on the Cranbrook plan, that the views of South West Water have been sought, but I would imagine it's unlikely that South West Water are going to turn around and say, well, sorry, but we're not adequate enough with our sewage plant to be able to cope with any additional infrastructure. Are they actually going to turn around and say that, or are they not? I might very much doubt it. But I wanted to relate the whole of this sewage discussion to the concerns over phosphate levels with the River Axe, because there, Natural England have intervened, and Natural England have told us that because of pollution and concerns of the River Axe, no development should take place whatsoever. Now, if you were minded to, on the end of your proposed item 3, you could add, and we will ask advice from Natural England. But I dread to say that, because otherwise Natural England will probably say to everybody in and around the River Exe that there's no development can take place, and that would completely scupper all our plans. But that is a thing. If Natural England are the overriding authority as far as phosphate levels and pollution and so on is concerned, if you dare to do it, add on to item 3, and we seek advice from Natural England.
I think the brilliant point, Councillor Moulding. As I remember from the Natural England report on the phosphates in the Axe Valley, I think it was 65 to 70% were coming from agricultural source, weren't they? Rather than what this is, which is what's being talked about here, is sewage. So it's slightly apples and oranges, perhaps, there.
Some was from sewage, Chair.
Yeah.
And that's why they were concerned that the plant in Kilmington during flooding conditions was overflowing, and the sewage was finding its way back into the River Axe.
I'm always very minded that I'm downstream from you, Councillor Moulding, as well. So we suffer down here in the Collier. Right, can I, Mr. Freeman, please. I'll take 2 more, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Chapman, and then let's go to a vote. Mr. Freeman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Moulding's point, really. Natural England have been involved throughout production of the Cranbrook plan. And the issues in the Axe are very different from the issues in the Exe. So obviously we're aware of the phosphate issues in the Axe. I'm not aware, and we haven't been advised by Natural England, of any phosphate issues in the Exe. The issues in the Exe are about recreational activity in the habitat from residential development within 10 kilometres of the habitat, rather than water quality issues, at least at this stage, although no doubt, there are risks there as well in terms of the ongoing situation. In terms of his point about our South West Water going to object, I mean, I understand the concern. Clearly South West Water are a business who make money off their connection charges and water rates. So is it in their interest to object to further development? And I suppose that's part of the reason why we've appointed consultants to undertake this water cycle study as an independent experts in these issues, to review what South West Water are telling us and the information from South West Water. And I think this comes back to the procedural and sequence of events issue that I think Councillor Howe was raising, in terms of when he was saying that this should all be addressed at the plan making stage. Well, he's correct, and obviously we've done that, and the plan's been found sound. But that doesn't preclude new information from coming forward as applications come forward that would still enable us to address these issues in a different way through the application process. And the water cycle study might give us that information. Further engagement with South West Water might give us further information. So we've still got that backstop, is my point, of the planning application process ultimately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ed. So if we could, Councillor Chapman, please, Maddie.
Thank you, Chair. Just for an update, we've had a red flag flying again off the beach at Exmouth due to pollution. but residents are monitoring containers of slurry coming into the Mare Valley treatment works. So South West Water is bringing sewage in from outside Exmouth to be treated, and it looks like it's going into the sea. So whether the environmental issue needs to be stepped up by EDDC, by us, to monitor what is happening off the beach, Exmouth and Budley. But this looks, judging by the residents are telling me, exactly what South West Water are doing. They're moving it from one place to another. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Be careful where you paddle in Exmouth. Finally, Councillor Skinner, please.
Yes, just very quickly, I think the point Councillor Davey made actually was a very good one. It was one I was going to sort of bring up, that the issue that you raised a bit, Chair, through your deliberations and questioning whether we get this plan through, and when we get the planning, what would the planning committee say? And I think it's really important what Councillor Davey put in is that the caveat that when it comes to planning, we were aware of this at strategic planning. And we raised some really big concerns at strategic planning, and and I think that's the trade-off between, because actually what Councillor Allen put forward by saying we'll caveat by saying subject to, this is not subject to, but it is also, we are very concerned about what's going to happen here. So I actually support that what Councillor David, well done to Councillor David bringing that forward, and the bits that have been added since through Damien and Henry have strengthened it up. So I'm in a happier place now, not absolutely, but a happier place than I was. Let's put it that way.
Lovely. I'm very interested in your happy place, Councillor Skinner. That's very good.
Well, you should be. It's quite important to you, really.
Is it? Okay. So we look as if we have some consensus that we have 3 recommendations. Now, again, I fear, Damien, you're probably not there still, are you? Because Damien had the complete wording and Henry had more or less the complete wording. So if we go, Henry, can I ask you just to read out the 3rd one again, please?
I think Damien might be back now, actually.
Ah, that's good.
Is he?
No, he's not. He's not yet, Chair.
Not.
Still trying to connect.
No.
Right.
Just try that.
Yeah. So it was SPC stated it's very clear, serious concerns around sewerage, and a clear expectation that East Devon District Council with Exeter City and Teignbridge District Councils will work with South West Water to obtain confirmation that any applications coming forward as part of the Cranbrook DPD will be able to deal with wastewater from environmental and sustainability grounds.
That's pretty good. Thank you very much. Members, I think that's clear. So I'm not sure who's taking us to a vote on this, but could somebody please take us to a vote on this?
I'm happy to, Chair. So members, if you are in support, if you could press your green button. If you're against, press your red button. If you would like to abstain, please raise your electronic hand. Okay, so for those watching online, the vote is currently taking place. Oh, let's move that away, can't see that. So we have 9 votes, 10 votes in support, no votes against, no abstentions, so that's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, thank you so much. That was a very, got a little bit warm around the edges at some point, but that was a very helpful debate. And I think that third recommendation is incredibly helpful to the council and to the residents. Thank you. Therefore, you've earned.
Thank you, Chair, for being so amenable.
That's right.
It was a good constructive discussion, and you chaired it superbly. Thank you.
Oh, well, I mean, I shall now go and self-based for 5 minutes during the comfort break. Thank you very much.
Steady,
in fact,
Mike.
can I?
Steady, Mike. Steady. We don't want to raise the council on up too much. Steady.
I've written all that down. That's going on. If I had a blog, it's going on it. Can we come back at 11:05, please?
Can I just make a quick comment, please, Chair? Before
you're only punishing yourself, Councillor Lawrence. Yes.
Yes, very, very quick one. Could I ask that officers or Ed or somebody make sure that when developers put in a planning application, that they are aware of our concerns over sewage? Because they're the ones that are going to ultimately put pressure on South West Water to do something.
Okay, that's well noted. In which case, you've earned us until 10 past. Let's go to 10 past 11. We'll be back in.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to enjoy this.
Members, if I could just ask you to make sure you're muted because the live stream is still running. Thank you. Chair, it's 10 past. I'm ready.
Thank you, Wendy. Yes, let's go then. Thank you, members and members of the public. We're back now in session after a short comfort break, and we're going to agenda item 7, the housing monitoring update to year ending 31st of March this year, which you can find on pages 143 to 171. And we begin with a report from Ed Freeman. Over to you, please, Ed.
Thank you, Chair. So members will be aware that on an annual basis, we record a housing monitoring update report that records on the number of homes that have been delivered in the last year, but also looking ahead towards the supply chain of new homes over the next 5 years, from which we calculate our 5-year housing land supply position, which members will be aware has significance in terms of the policy position and the weight that can be given to policies within the adopted local plan. So this is the latest report. Members will recall that the last couple of monitoring reports have noted a declining position in terms of the supply chain, as it were, in terms of sites coming forward. And perhaps the key thing to note in terms of this report is, as mentioned at a previous meeting, our annual requirement now under the government standard method for calculating housing need means that we now need to plan for 946 homes per year, whereas we were previously planning for 918 homes per year. And as you'll see as you go through the report, that this actually has quite a significant consequence in terms of our supply position. But first of all, in terms of sort of net housing completions, you'll see that during the 21-22 monitoring period, 1,039 homes were completed in the district, representing a good supply position. And that's reflective really across the last 5 years, even during the depths of the COVID pandemic in 2020-21. We still had 867 homes completed in the district, which is excellent. I know some other authorities saw their supply chain drop to half of normal levels, if not lower. So to maintain supply at 867 against the target of 918 at that time was an excellent position. So you'll see the problem is not so much in terms of net housing completions, it's more in terms of our projected housing completions moving forward. So if you look at the table in paragraph 2.4, of the report, you'll see our projected housing completions for 2022, 23 through to 2030, 31. So the rest is clear 2024 to 25, where we dropped from 1,008 homes projected completions in 24-25 down to 745 in 25-26 and 612 in 26-27, thereby dropping substantially below the 948 per year that we need to provide. And as a result of that, our supply position in terms of the 5-year housing land supply is not looking so good. And essentially this means that we cannot at present show a 5-year housing land supply position. This is on the basis of including a 5% buffer that we need to provide under the legislation, which means that we have a position of 4.68 years. I'll come on to the impacts of that, but first of all, just quickly on the housing delivery test, which is the other requirement of the legislation. As I say, because the housing delivery test looks backwards over supply in recent years, we're actually doing quite well. And the latest position in terms of that, which was released in January of this year, shows that we passed the test with a score of 123%, which means we don't fall into any categories at which any actions are required. And you'll see at paragraph 4.4, the relevant actions kick in at 95%. And get progressively worse if supply drops to less than 75%. So fortunately, we don't need to worry about that at the moment, but obviously the number of completions, unless we take action, will obviously start to drop as well in future years. So in terms of the impact of not having a 5-year housing land supply, some members will recall the last time this happened, which was in the late noughties. That effectively we have a position where where the policies within the local plan effectively are considered out of date and can't carry as much weight as they would usually. And this will effectively mean that in locations, sustainable locations, which effectively are not in line with our policies and the strategy of the local plan, may still have to be judged acceptable where they are sustainable developments, so even where they are outside of built-up area boundaries. The likelihood means in order to be sustainable development that they would obviously have to be close to or adjoining built-up area boundaries in order to have adequate access to services and facilities to be judged as sustainable. So I don't think there's a risk of developments coming forward in remote countryside locations. And as it says in the report, there are still protected areas where these issues don't apply. So the areas of outstanding natural beauty, triple SIs, designated heritage assets, areas at risk of flooding. So the report says the majority of the district is therefore not vulnerable, but it does leave much of particularly the western part of the district and many of the settlements there that are sustainable locations for growth potentially vulnerable to applications coming forward that do not conform with the local plan and our policy position. Since we were last in this position, the NPPF has been updated and now takes note of the role of neighbourhood plans in terms of all of this. And so there are provisions where neighbourhood plans are part of the development plan, and 2 years or less since the date on which the neighbourhood plan was made, these carry significant weight and effectively protect our position. We do, as members will be aware, have quite a number of neighbourhood plans. However, only 5 of them were actually made in the last 2 years, those being Collerton, Dalwood, Farringdon, Newton Poppleford and Otterton. So in those areas, these requirements, provisions of paragraph 11 in the NPPF as detailed at paragraph 5.2 in the report would apply. And should help to ensure we can take an adequately robust position while those neighbourhood plans are within that 2-year window. So what are we doing to address the housing land supply position? Well, obviously the committee has been doing a huge amount of work in terms of the new local plan. And while that won't immediately resolve the issues, obviously progressing sites through allocation through the new local plan will help to bolster that supply chain and help to show how we hope to meet future housing needs in the district in the years to come. It's not, however, until sites have actually been granted full planning permission that they actually count within that 5-year supply chain. So it's important that we're also working to bolster supply through the grant of consents in appropriate locations. And obviously we act upon the presumption in favour of sustainable development. So members will be aware that there was note taken in the previous housing monitoring report about the need to do this, and a number of sites have started to come through the system and are now coming through the pre-application process, through members' advisory panels and through applications now, which effectively bringing forward potentially some of the sites that we're looking at through the local plan process and through the application process in advance of local plan allocation, with a view to potentially granting consent ahead of that process in order to bolster supply. Obviously, those applications have yet to be determined by planning committee, and obviously they need to be judged on their own merits. So fundamentally, those are the headlines of this report. Happy to take any questions, but the recommendations are that Strategic Planning Committee, first of all, note the housing land supply position and its implications. Note the residential dwellings completions data and future projections for the district. And finally, note that the housing monitoring update will be published on the council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ed. Can I just do a quick piece of housekeeping and then ask you a question? The quick piece of housekeeping is, Ed, have any members joined this session who haven't had an opportunity to declare interest yet? Just shout, or nobody? Okay, good. Ed, can I ask your view? What would happen, as seems to be being signalled by the government at the moment, although we're not sure where it goes. But what if the government changes this housing need number target? Because there's a lot of talk going on over the weekend and indeed this morning with the Prime Minister talking about planning from the bottom up rather than strategy imposed from above. In the event that the targets were changed or even abandoned, how would we respond to that?
Well, Chair, I think I would be speculating fundamentally without knowing what the government would actually do, because I think it's not just about the standard method, but what they would do about the 5-year housing land supply requirement and the housing delivery test, because they all kind of go hand in hand. Fundamentally, it's the standard method that determines the figure that we are assessing in terms of what we need to supply. So if that's done away, but the 5-year housing land supply requirement were to remain, then I would presume that we would then revert back to using the housing supply figures that are in our local plan, which may be the reference to these things being set at a local level, which potentially doesn't really help us, because I think the members will be aware the sort of averaged out requirement per year in the local plan was around 950 homes anyway. So simply doing away with the standard method and leaving that to be set at local level wouldn't potentially address our issue. But there would be a question, I think, to government that would go hand in hand with potentially scrapping the standard method, would be what that means for the 5-year housing land supply position and whether or not that requirement remains. Or whether or not they just leave us with the housing delivery test, which is perhaps less of a challenge for us, at least at the present time. But fundamentally, it's speculation. I think we need to wait and see what the government do.
No, absolutely. I think worth raising that. Thank you. It's a really helpful answer. Thank you. Coming to members outside of strategic planning, Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well done, Ed and team, of keeping to the housing supply numbers. It's been a challenge, and now it's really good figures. But I'm worried about going forward with accepting some sites that don't comply to the new the present local plan, because once one gets permitted, then the developer, another developer will be using that as an example as well. You've given that one permission, so why not this one? And I do wonder how planning inspectors are going to view it as well, by that they'll be seeing these exception sites coming forward, and how if we refuse one and not refuse another, how is that going to be viewed by the planning inspectors? Now that's the main concern I have, especially in this area in the west of the district, where most of the planning is happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Pratt, please.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the figures in paragraph 2.4, while we have good figures up to 2024 to 25, from then on, Ed, we have very low figures. And I wonder if you could confirm how you arrive at those figures when they're so far ahead of the time. And the other point I'd like to raise is in regard to completions of properties. Wouldn't it be easier to refer to the building regs department of the council, because they issue completion certificates when these houses are completed? So you'd get a more accurate figure then, wouldn't you?
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Okay, Ed, can you address those two, please, from Councillor Pratt?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, yes, certainly in terms of the figures, a variety of sources. I mean, fundamentally, the projections looking forward are based on, what consents have we granted, and then what information have we got from the developer about when those are likely to come forward. So fundamentally, we've done a lot of work in contacting developers of particularly the major developments and understanding their intentions in terms of when housing will be delivered. There's standard methods in terms of delivery rates that are used in terms of the HELAR methodology that members have seen in the past that helps to inform that as well. But obviously, the further ahead we look, the less certain we can be fundamentally. But I think certainly the projections for the next 5 years are pretty accurate and based on those sources. In terms of completions data looking back, I mean, I think again, we check and double check the data. Building regulations, our own building regulations department obviously issue completion certificates for developments that they themselves have dealt with, but obviously they're operating in a competitive market with approved inspectors as well. So it's not a 100% reliable source of information, but it is one of the sources of information that we use to inform our calculations of housing completions, among others as well. Hopefully that helps, Chair.
Councillor Pratt, would you like to come back?
Yes, it seems to me, though, it's still a bit of a guessing game when we're looking at years such as 2028 to 29, and this is where I think the figures are questionable. But thank you for your answer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pratt and Ed, for those answers. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, looking at exception sites is quite normal in planning committee, and nothing stops us helping people through the planning procedures. It's obviously very difficult to speed those up when you can't get enough staff, isn't it, Ed? So it's a difficult situation to be in, but clearly up until the existing local plans projections, we expected there would be a fall off. And obviously the Cranbrook extension was all part of making sure that there was enough housing. All of that depended on getting the Cranbrook master plan sorted out. So see how all these things tend to hang together, and why we need to be very careful about making the right decisions at this stage. One thing, though, that is not really focused on apart from housing is point 7 on the agenda, page 149. We haven't even started a report on the employment land review. And at one stage, Ed said that there was a review coming through in September, but if it hasn't even started yet, we are in a serious situation with regard to the balance of the whole situation. If we don't know where the jobs and employment are, then planning new housing is complex, and approving it may not be sustainable. So I'm hoping, Ed, you can give us a delivery point for an employment land monitoring statement and a bit of guidance as to your employment land economic proposals in the local plan, because at present we just don't have any numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. It's a good topic, and I will come back to Ed for it. Ed mentions it in this report, but it isn't actually what this report is about. But I do understand why you're asking. Is there, Ed, any update on how the employment land review might be coming along?
Yeah, so Chair, I mean, I think there's two issues here. One is the annual employment land monitoring report, which is what's referred to in paragraph 7.1 of the report. I mean, fundamentally, that's a resourcing issue. As you can appreciate, a lot of resource has to go into producing these monitoring reports. We've also got a lot of resource committed to the local plan and production of the local plan, and we can only do so many things at one time. And so these monitoring reports, unfortunately, have had to take a little bit of a back seat while we've been working so hard on the local plan, which is why work hasn't started yet on the employment land monitoring report. I hope that once the local plan is out to consultation, we will be able to then commit resource to doing that piece of work, and we'll obviously bring that to you as soon as we can. The other piece of work that's obviously ongoing is about employment land allocations for the new local plan. Some of that is on the agenda for this Friday's meeting. In the draft plan, you'll see there's a number of particularly the large scale employment sites within the west end of the district noted as potential allocations within the draft of the local plan on the agenda for Friday. We also talk in that document about a number of the large scale allocations around the towns being mixed use allocations, whereby we're allocating housing and employment spaces alongside each other to try and address the issues of self-containment that I think are highlighted in the council plan, but also to ensure that those are sustainable developments whereby hopefully people can live, work and undertake recreation and community activities all within the same site, and promoting these principles of a 20-minute neighbourhood that members were keen to promote through the new local plan. There is also further work going on in terms of the economic development needs assessment, which is a key piece of evidence for the local plan, which hasn't quite been finalised yet, and stemming from that will be an overall need of employment spaces, and we will need to look again in terms of whether or not there are further employment allocations that need to be made, and we obviously need to bring some work to you in terms of that in the future as well. Unfortunately, the sequencing of that work has been slightly delayed, so we'll present the picture as it exists in terms of the local plan for consultation starting on Friday's meeting, and then the final plan for consultation at the 1st of November meeting. But there may still be further work to be done post that in terms of employment spaces, moving into the next iteration of the plan into next year. Hopefully that helps, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anna, for raising that point. Ed, can I just ask you as a broad question before I come to Councillor Skinner and Councillor Ingham, which is that there's always the worry, isn't there, that we're at the point where we can't demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, that sort of we're sent naked into the conference chamber, so to speak, and that we don't have any defence then against developers coming forward. But I mean, that's not strictly the case, is it? There are various sort of kind of arguments that can be put, both by officers and by planning committee, that don't necessarily have to just flip something through because we can't demonstrate 5 years supply.
That's right, Chair. I mean, we still have a good level of control, and I think hopefully Section 5 of the report helps to demonstrate that in terms of, well, it's a presumption in favour. It's still a presumption in favour of sustainable development, and fundamentally, development in sustainable locations should still be development that's good and promotes good development and sustainable growth within the community. And as I say, the key protected areas such as AONBs, triple SIs, heritage assets, areas at risk of flooding are still protected from that presumption. And we still have the protection of neighbourhood plans that are less than 2 years old. So it's not I know it can get painted as a complete loss of control. It's not at all. I think we still have significant levels of control. The significant issue really is that it means the strategy for growth and policies are in the local plan that seek to contain growth outside of those designated areas cannot carry as much weight as they would usually have done fundamentally, and that does have knock-on impacts for other things such as, for example, affordable housing. So our affordable housing requirements are dictated around the built-up area boundaries. So if those built-up area boundaries carry less weight, then clearly in areas outside of those boundaries is going to be very difficult to secure a higher level of affordable housing as the policies would usually expect, and it's going to be the 25%, or as is the case in the lower value areas. Obviously in some of the higher value areas it's 50% even within the built-up area boundaries. So there are a number of issues that fall out of that as well, but fundamentally the principle is still sustainable development, which is what planning is all about fundamentally. So we should still only be granting development that is sustainable.
Thanks, Ed, very much. Councillor Skinner, please.
Thank you, and it leads me on to the next point, because in actual fact we have been here before. I can tell you, Chair, before your time, and it's a horrible place to be.
Councillor Skinner, I was watching very closely at the time. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, good. So you're aware what I was meaning before your time on the council was my. Perhaps I should have finished the sentence. And it's a real horrible time for local authorities to be in a place when, you know, we're trying to very much deliver a strategic plan, and it takes years to build them all up, and then we get at the 11th hour we get cut down by people putting something right in a place which can affect us strategically and what we're trying to deliver, and that's the real upset. So where we are is, and Mr. Freeman's absolutely right, is we do have policies that of course we want our officers to support through the planning process when it comes to that sort of level. But where you lose with your 5-year housing land supply, of course, if they get turned down by our so-called policies, it's then when they go to the planning inspectorate, and it's when the planning inspectorate then look at it and overturn us because of the lack of our 5-year housing land supply. And I particularly aim that one at Mr. Pratt, Councillor Pratt, sorry, because Councillor Pratt was asking those questions, and that's where we are, Councillor Pratt, with that. And it's really quite a horrible place. So we try to protect them, and sometimes we're not able to. But of course, as time goes on, if we don't get ourselves into gear, the situation gets worse. But I hope to think that actually things would actually get better, and we'd actually get our 5-year housing land supply back, and we'd be able to put development where we think they should be strategically put. But what I wanted to move on to, so that was that issue, and I wanted to get that over. It's not what we would necessarily as an authority want to allow or not, but it's what the planning inspectorate overrule us because of the lack of our housing 5-year housing land supply, which is our problem. But I wanted to pick up, and Councillor Allen actually touched on it, and of course he would be, because he's very much like me, very much about employment, land and space, and creating jobs and moving forward, and seeing how that the jobs and employment land monitoring is coming forward in the future. And there's one I'd like to sort of ask Ed, really, because I sort of struggle in one sense about how our local plan goes out for consultation. But it sounds to me like, from what's being said, that the local plan is going to go out not as a complete document, but go out for consultation, unless I heard Mr. Freeman wrong, but going out for consultation on the housing process first, in its singular form. That was the sort of the gist of what I said, and I never thought that a plan went. I thought our plan went out complete with housing, employment, land, open space, and everything else, and how we go out to consultation. So I'm assuming, Mr. Freeman, if I'm correct, well, perhaps I ought to let you answer that rather than me do my assuming. Could I ask you just to clarify what you meant by that position? Because it's quite clear that we need the whole document to go out to consultation with the jobs, the employment, as Councillor Allen quite rightly pointed out. Whom are we building the houses for? Because I've always said we've always doing it the wrong way around with this process. But anyway, we are where we are. How are we going to get the jobs aligned with the housing, aligned with the open space, employment space, the health and well-being and infrastructure and all those things?
Can I, Councillor Skinner, can you indulge me? Can we, I'm sure everyone will remember that question. Can he answer it under the next agenda item, which is about consultation? Is that okay for you to do?
That's fine by me. If I got the answer, that's fine. No problem.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. It's very helpful. Thank you. Councillor Ingham, please.
Thank you. I'd like to hear his opinion on a few things, Chair. One is it's been pointed out to me that Exeter City Council have admitted not only that they don't have a 5-year land supply, they've admitted that it's nearer to a 4-year land supply. But it was pointed out to me that if you study those figures, that's not actually correct. It's about 3.1. So I'd like to know how relevant our status is
with regards to other councils immediately adjacent to us and how that alleviates the pressure on us. Because Ed said, you know, as long as we are able to defend our ground well, then it's not an impossible situation. And I do feel, Chair, that we have an exceptional track record here at East Devon compared to some other councils within Devon, for just limiting it to that. And that if we were to put forward the correct, appropriate, coherent strategies, then we are in a safe place, and we shouldn't panic to hit the spot with appropriate numbers, which, as you questioned, Chair, yourself, may not be valid in less than 12 months. So I wouldn't want us to race to comply a set of targets that will soon be removed, especially when you see our conduct in comparison to our neighbours. And I also feel, Chair, I'd like to hear what Ed feels about how we are where we are. I believe a lot of it is to do with the rollout of Cranbrook. However much over the years, councillors like me have accused it of being inarticulate, we have, for a considerable time, sustained that 5-year land supply. And what type of growth was that? It was a brand new town, Chair. And I'd suggest to you, if we were to mimic that again with another brand new town, that is the way to secure a 5-year land supply. And I also suggest to you, because of our track record, if we were to approach national government and say, look, we may be a year, maybe 2 years late starting to hit those targets and those figures, but we can secure a sustained 5-year land supply if you give us enough time to do this properly and meet our climate emergency strategy for Devon and put those houses in one place next to where all the jobs are being created and have been for the last, what is now getting on to 15 years. Chair, I'd like to hear what Ed has to say to those points, especially when you bear in mind Exeter has, between 2020 and 2021, supplied six affordable homes. And, you know, that's the kind of target we're expecting a pottery to come up with, Chair. I'd like to hear what Ed has to say about it. Thank you.
There's a couple of distinct strands in there, aren't there? There's the thing about the strength of our position in relation to other Devon authorities and whether, in fact, there's some special pleading we will be able to do with government in relation to our excellent track record, in order not to be sort of harassed into, you know, artificially allowing too many through. And then the second thing, really, which is a very interesting point, is about the role of a new town, even a second new town, and the timescales for that, which may help us with these land supply numbers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think just pick up on the Exeter issue first of all. I mean, Exeter haven't had a 5-year land supply for a number of years, as far as I'm aware, and I don't believe it's had any direct impact on ourselves. The impacts that the consequences of not having a 5-year land supply relates to the district or city council boundaries within which that is the case. So it doesn't spill over, as it were, in terms of the consequences in that way. And Exeter are producing their own local plan that seeks to address the housing needs identified within the city. They've not come to us and said they can't meet their needs. There is obviously a process for doing that under the duty to cooperate, but they haven't made that approach to date. So I don't think there are any real consequences, or at least at this stage, of Exeter's position for East Devon. In terms of our own position, I mean, I think there are a number of reasons really why we find ourselves without a 5-year housing land supply. Certainly delays with the Cranbrook expansion area is part of that. And hopefully adoption of the Cranbrook plan and applications now coming in for those expansion areas will start to speed through those applications. And obviously those are locations where we do want to see growth. And we can start to see development starting to take place on the ground in those areas. But the wider issue, I guess, in terms of the wider district, is that many of the sites that were allocated in the now adopted local plan have come forward, have been built out, and are there. And it's through the new local plan providing that pipeline of new sites coming forward. I hope in terms of the consequences that fundamentally, because we've obviously been through the call for sites process, we've now assessed all of the sites that have come forward through the local plan process. We understand what we've got in terms of sites coming forward, that I hope in reality it will simply be a case of perhaps bringing forward some of those favoured sites for allocation perhaps earlier than them waiting to be allocated through the plan, rather than us ending up being under pressure to bring forward sites that we wouldn't otherwise be contemplating bringing forward. But time will tell in terms of what applications we receive and what the consequences of those are. But fundamentally, yes, delays to the Cranbrook plan, the fact that the adopted local plan is over 5 years old, those are the main reasons. A new community, a second new community, obviously in the long term will help to address housing land supply, but it's not going to deliver any homes in the next 5 years. I think our projections are that if allocating a further new community in the local plan, it will probably take 10 years from sort of now, lead-in time, before ground gets broken and homes start to be delivered. So really, in terms of 5-year housing land supply, it's a long way from having a direct impact, but it's about bolstering that supply chain for the future, so that we know where those homes are coming from in 10 years' time, and obviously for many years beyond that. If it's a new community of sort of 6,000-7,000 homes, that will be a significant part of our supply chain for potentially decades to come.
Thanks, Ed. Ben, do you want to come back at all on what you've just heard?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do, because you see, accepting that disparity between our current targets and 10 years, just accepting that and giving up, in my eyes, is not good enough. This is exactly the time that we should be banging on the door of national government saying, look, it may take longer, but can you not see that these are going to be credible housing numbers that get delivered in the right place, at the right time, and to the right standards of sustainability for, endurance of, a climate change. So I hear what Ed says, but I don't think the stance is good enough. I think we should be, very proactive in addressing this through national government. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for letting me come back. You were right.
No pleasure. It's a very good point. If you and Councillor Skinner would like to join me and Councillor Hayward on a charabanc to whoever's Prime Minister in Downing Street in the coming months, I'm delighted to come with you. I think Ed gave a good answer, but I think you're right, Ben. This becomes political, actually. So maybe we should find some commonality of purpose across the council and start to raise this up the political agenda. Whatever that agenda is going to be in the coming months. To be honest, I've no idea who's in charge of planning at the moment. Does anybody else know? Who's in the job? Anybody?
I can add one thing.
No, councillors can have a look. Do you know who's in charge of planning for the government? And then you've earned the right to another comment, because I don't.
Well, I don't know who's in charge of planning with the government.
So that's none of us. Okay.
It's forever shifting. But what I will just say quickly is that had we had the guest process, and I know you're going to say what you'll say to that, had we had the guest process, this job would have been much easier. But we are where we are, and I agree with you actually, Leader, that or sorry, Chair, that actually it is going to be a trip up to London. And I do think the words that Councillor Ingham has said, that as Conservatives, we need to be making our way, and as a council making our way to government, because we've had a COVID, we've had all sorts of things piled in our way, and building costs have gone up. We need to have a reset with this, and this is, we're not being treated fairly, regardless. That's not to do with politics necessarily. It's we need to be getting to these people and have a conversation. But we'll leave it to that. Well, that's for another debate another day. Thank you.
Absolutely. Or indeed the old debate about guests, which I know you'll never let go. But my view is we could have ended up consuming a lot of other people's smoke. But there we go. That's a debate for another day, isn't it?
Well,
right.
I'll argue with that one all day long.
You can do. Let's do it somewhere else. Right. So we do seem to have, thank you, heard all the speakers speaking. So just looking, it has given us the recommendations already, that we note the housing land supply position and its implications, that we note the residential dwellings completions data and future projections for the district, and that we note that the housing monitoring update will be published on the council's website. So I'm happy to propose those from the chair. Damien, can you take us to a vote, please?
Certainly, Chair. Thank you very much. I won't obviously repeat the recommendations you've just gone through.
I'm sorry about that. I've stolen your job. Sorry, Dave.
Oh, no, it's absolutely fine. Save me a job. So now, members, it's just a case of your voting, please. So if you can press your green tick if you're in support of the recommendation, your red cross if you're against the recommendation, or raise your electronic hand to indicate if you're abstaining from the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. That's 9 votes in support, 10 votes in support, no votes against, no abstentions. That's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members, for another very interesting debate. We've got our final agenda item now. I think agenda item 8, the draft local plan 2020 to 2040, the consultation strategy, which you can read about on pages 172 to 176. Over to you again, please, Ed.
Thank you, Chair. So members will be aware we did the consultation on the issues and options phase of the local plan early last year. I think there were some issues raised by some members at the time in terms of the software we were using and how that consultation was presented. And I know members raised concerns about the response rates that we had, particularly from younger people. And so we've tried to really look at this with the communications team about how we can address that in terms of consultation on this draft local plan, and try to come up with a consultation that's more engaging and also hopes to gain responses from a wider range of age groups and basically all people in the community. And so what we've done is try to develop this strategy that looks at how we can make better use of social media, for example, as a means of particularly interacting with the younger generation, but also using things like video content that can be shared online and give people some key information and key points about the plan without them necessarily having to sift through a 300-page document to comment on. So we envisaged creating some short videos about what's happening in each town, key subject areas, so videos around climate change, around houses, employment spaces, and things to draw out key issues and hopefully gain some interest through social media channels even, and some sort of immediate feedback in terms of likes of those videos, people sharing those videos that we can use to guide our work on the local plan. Another key area we've looked at is how we can engage with young people through schools and colleges, and potentially through youth parliament. So a colleague of mine met with a member of the youth parliament to understand how we could engage more with people of their generation, and that's sort of a bit of an area that we're still working on, but we'd like to offer something particularly to schools and colleges in the area, perhaps in some kind of online assembly whereby we could present some of the key issues around the local plan and try to obtain some views and feedback through that. And then there's a whole list of other communication methods mentioned in section 4. There's newsletters that we routinely do already as an organisation out to residents who registered an interest in planning and housing issues. so we can use that. The videos I mentioned, we envisage embedding on the website as well to make those available to a wider audience, using press releases, information through posters and banners. We need to look into this in more detail, but we had thought about how we could use council property around the district, perhaps our leisure centres, council offices, to put up banners and posters to advertise the consultation. Greater use of QR codes, so members may be well aware of these sort of blocks that you get on posters sometimes that you can scan on your smartphone that takes you as a direct link to a website. So we've been using those for some years on our site notices for planning applications, but looking to use those as well in terms of publicity for the local plan consultation to give people quick and easy access to the consultation. Also we've been running a series of online workshops through neighbourhood planning groups and town and parish councils, and we're setting one of those up at the moment for later this month, and envisage having another one during the consultation period to get out key messages to those groups and their feedback on what we're doing. So there's a number of key issues that we're looking at focusing on section 5, and then section 6 of the report talks about the consultation software, and obviously it's difficult to talk you through in text about a piece of software and what it looks like. I hope that we'll be in a position before the consultation goes live to potentially do a demonstration of the software, but essentially we have a piece of council software called Commonplace, which is an online citizen engagement platform that we can use now, that will hopefully help to make the consultation more engaging and interactive through putting details of key information online. It can ask questions about that information in a series of different ways. It also presents the material in a way that's adaptable, so depending on whether or not you're looking at a tablet or a smartphone or a laptop, it will appear in an accessible format that's easy to use and enable people to view the information and comment on consultation questions all in the same window, which was an issue we've had previously, where people have had to have more than one window open in order to be able to do that. It also includes a mapping tool that will enable us to show the potential site allocation options on a mapping system and enable people to quickly click on those, obtain basic information about that potential allocation, see a sort of traffic light system that shows whether or not it's a preferred site, a second choice site, or a site that's already been dismissed, and briefly comment and give feedback on those sites. So we hope that this will enable us to have a more interactive and engaging consultation on the draft plan through greater use of this technology. And as I say, it would be nice if we can get to that position to be in a position to demonstrate some of that to members, because I'm conscious that in a written report and me talking about software, you're probably not getting a particular flavour of the software and how it works. A demonstration, hopefully nearer the time, will be much more effective in doing that. Just finally, and to pick up on the point I think Councillor Skinner made in relation to the previous item about what we're actually consulting on. What we envisage is consulting on effectively a full plan, a full draft plan, but it will be a draft plan. So it doesn't mean we can't make changes and additions later on, post the consultation. The issue with the employment issues and the economic evidence is that it's lagging slightly behind in terms of the work that we're doing, which means that assessments of particularly sort of employment sites that were allocated in the previous local plan, there's questions, do we carry those over because they haven't delivered in that plan period? So we need to do further work on those. We have some allocations for employment, as I said earlier, in the draft plan, but it may be, as the evidence emerges, that we need to look at further sites, and so that may necessitate further consultation further down the road. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't be consulting on a full plan now based on the information that we have got, including both housing and employment sites, and setting out a clear strategy for growth, and also a full set of development management policies And you'll see when we come to the meeting on Friday, on that agenda, you will see there is a draft of that document for members to consider and debate at Friday's meeting. What we envisage doing is, off the back of that meeting, is then updating that document and then bringing a final draft for consultation to your 1st of November meeting, and then following that event, launching the actual consultation itself. So hopefully that's clear in terms of what we envisage in terms of the consultation and what we would be consulting on. The recommendation on this item is that members note the ideas presented in the report and agree that the proposed consultation methods set out within the report form the basis of engagement for the draft local plan consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ed. May I first invite any hands up from people from outside of the Strategic Planning Committee? Nobody there, so Councillor Mike Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think we ought to alter the report summary, at least to make sure that we're not consulting on the draft local plan in October, as it so reads. We're actually saying it won't get going until November at the earliest. Frankly, without the economic development and infrastructure components that we've been debating all the way through today, I can't see that it's a valid plan for consultation because it's missing key elements. I was trying to read through the actual text of the draft plan, and it's littered with items which still need including. And until I get a proper local plan to actually agree should be consulted on, then I don't think we should go ahead. So my proposal is that formal proposal that we don't go ahead with the consultation until we've got the economic development and infrastructure components in. Secondly, it's very important, isn't it, to make sure that in all respects, when we're looking at consultation, the older population don't get left out. I'm absolutely delighted with what Mr. Freeman has recommended in terms of the younger population and in terms of what he's recommended in terms of social media. But the one thing I would say, and again propose, is that each major town, all 7 of them, should have an evening presentation of the full local plan made so that people can comment at those venues. Thank you, Chair.
Now, Councillor Allen, please don't take this personally, but I can't accept that one either. What we're discussing today is really, and for information in a way, is the consultation strategy. In other words, how it's being done. It's around who's being consulted, software, all the rest of it. So the not going ahead with the consultation, you can try that out on Friday if you like, in the different, because we've got another meeting, haven't we, which is around that. So I can't. Whether we should be insisting on having meetings, in each town, that's fine. That's something we can discuss. But do you see the point I'm making there? That the agenda item isn't actually about whether we're going to go out to do it or not. Definitely, that comes up on Friday.
Don't know quite what to say because obviously you're asking to defer my motion till Friday, which I fully accept, but it's still a valid motion in terms of the consultation with the towns. I accept that. I'm happy to defer my motion on delay and comprehensiveness of the local plan until Friday. Yes, if we can put that onto the agenda, but in respect of actually methodology of consultation, that is what we're discussing.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I'll be grateful if you could note my proposal that each town should have an evening meeting where the proposals are presented of the local plan with particular emphasis on the local town where the meeting is being held.
Okay. Yeah, we can certainly discuss that now. I'd have to say, to be fair to the officers, I think that would probably break them into 1,000 pieces. We are also looking for another surge in COVID in the next few weeks. It seems like a great idea, doesn't it? But anyway, let's have more contributions and see if that gets some traction. So coming to Councillor Miller next, please.
Thanks very much for letting me in from outside the committee, because it is on this point as well. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Allen's suggested proposal, and obviously I can't second it, because I do believe having a face-to-face presentation to residents town by town will be extremely helpful. You know, I welcome what Ed has done in terms of wanting to engage younger people. You know, I think I'm still younger demographically compared with East Devon, so absolutely welcome that. But I think we have to remember that we live in a predominantly elderly district, and I think, I mean, any surge in COVID, obviously withstanding, I do think face-to-face public meetings, are old-fashioned as they may seem, are good. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I believe we had that in the last local plan consultation. So I don't see why we shouldn't have it this time. I think it's democratic. I think it'll engage people. I think more people will come to that kind of thing. And I think it'll be very useful. It'll be very useful to us as well. We want as many members of the public to engage in this as possible. I do take your point, Chair, about breaking the offices. Nobody wants to do that. But you know, in my view, it's a fundamental thing about democracy. Really, we want as many residents to participate in as many different ways as possible, not just online, but being able to see something in person is very important for some people who don't have access, by the way, to Zoom and the internet, or don't necessarily know how to use it, or digitally excluded. So I think it is absolutely vital. Thanks for letting me in, Chair.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Miller. It is interesting. I suppose we probably don't still have them, but what the attendance figures were at in-person town meetings last time round would be probably quite informative, wouldn't they?
Absolutely.
So Councillor Skinner next, please.
Well, I welcome the things that have been said, but I want to take it piece by piece. I quite welcome the fact that Councillor Miller believes that meeting up is although it being old-fashioned, is the way to go. I thought it was quite comical, really. But anyway, there we go. I'm confused by, and I pick up on my suggestions earlier, really, and Councillor Allen's he's garnered it very well. I'm not comfortable with sending out a report that's not complete. If you send out a consultation, the consultation surely has to be complete, and this is the consultation. If you're going to send out a consultation with, we haven't quite got all the information, but this is the bones of it, but we'll let you know later on, or what part are they consulting on? So I will really struggle, and I know I won't be able to, I will not be able to support a consultation document that goes out that is not complete with all aspects of.
Councillor Skinner, this is great. This is for Friday, if that's okay. Genuinely.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm moving in. One will morph into another. It didn't erase. It's at 9 minutes past 12. We got a little bit of time, haven't we? So I'm really not comfortable, and I'm letting you know this, Chair, because you made.
I already know it, Councillor Skinner. Let me address this agenda item for today's meeting.
Because you keep making comments. You see, nobody gets to come back on your comments. You made a comment earlier to Councillor Howe and to one of my other members that if you Conservatives had got together over the sewage thing, might have known where it is. So I'm giving you a heads up here before Friday's meeting. Councillor Allen is mentioning it. I'm mentioning it. So as you've got a heds up for Friday, what's coming down the road, and that's why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Yes,
I can't be accused of, you can't beat me always. So, on that basis, I will not be comfortable with a consultation going out that is not complete. But one of the things I will add to that, and bear with you, Chair, that we've got things coming out for Friday, and that's fine as well. But what I would also like to mention, which hasn't been mentioned yet, and I will ask Ed this one, if he could do, is I'm very keen, and Ed will know this over the years, and many other councillors, on our sport and leisure structure, our open space, our well-being, and all of that, which is all a key element and a key part of our consultation going forward. Ed, and on that basis, Ed, when is that part all coming forward, and when is that all going to be sort of the creation of that space and all the rest of it? When are we going to have the opportunity to get our 2 pennies worth into that and formulating the plan as a whole?
Okay, so I'll come back to it with all this in a minute. I'm just looking at, I'm just wondering if anybody else has today's report. Okay, so what it addresses very specifically, it says that last time round, basically, the overwhelming majority of respondents to our questionnaire were either in the 56 to 70 or 70 plus age groups. Okay, it's the first thing. What the rest of the report addresses is the, I have to say, incredibly imaginative ways in which there has been an effort to contact not that age group only this time. That's the point of this report. So what we're talking about is, do we like the ideas of this miraculous piece of software that Ed has told us about, and obviously we can't see, or not? That's what we're talking about today, rather than what's included in the consultation itself, which is a matter for Friday. So forgive me for repeating that, but Councillor Ingham, please.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting what you just said. I was concerned, and I haven't discussed this with Councillor Allen or Miller, in that I think we should be careful not to disenfranchise those people who were 50 to 70, now 60 to 80, and the top end of that. Now, I liked what Ed was explaining, how we roll it out. And I double checked, if you look there, it's all there, press releases as well, and newsletters, that's fine. But how does that feed back? If you're 85, how do you feed back in without access to the internet? You may have a daughter, a grandson who can say, well, have a look at this and take you through it. But then you go away and how do you report it back? I don't think reporting back online is adequate. I'd say actually it's actually ageist, because you're knowingly preventing people from a certain age group from responding. And I think they should be allowed to, reply on paper. What reassurance can you give us, Ed, that that's going to happen?
So can I come to Ed on that? But Ben, with respect, you've just had a Conservative Party election for a leader on which the vast majority of people have been over 60, I'm guessing. So I don't think there's any ageism in this. But what I think we need to find out from Ed is...
You may not, I do. And I because that's the Equalities Act. And it's important.
Yeah, but this report is trying to address, it accepts that we did a good job last time with the older people. It's trying to address how we reach the younger people. Again, I'm wondering if anyone's actually read this from top to toe. Ed, is there the possibility of putting paper copies of this out for people who require that as well?
Chair, we can certainly do that, yes, and put paper copies in libraries and town halls and things if that's members' wish. I would, as you've highlighted, say that the last consultation on issues and options engaged high numbers of people in the 56 to 70 age group and the 70 plus age groups, and was an entirely online consultation because COVID restrictions were in place at that time. And as you say, there is the risk of further COVID restrictions this winter as we launch this consultation as well. I would also say that while I wasn't involved at the time, I understand from colleagues that the face-to-face, in-person events that were held for the previous local plan were not well attended. And that was nearly 10 years ago. So I suspect turnout for those sorts of events today, particularly in the current climates, could be quite low, and question whether or not that's an efficient use of officer time. But obviously, if that's members' wish, then we can work up some way of doing that. But I do think what we've set out does comply with the equalities legislation and does enable everyone to engage in this work and this process. There are an awful lot of silver surfers out there who I think would be quite happy to be able to do this from their own home electronically rather than necessarily attend face-to-face events. And as I say, you know, we've looked at these workshops. The neighbourhood planning and town and parish council workshops have been very well attended. And we could look at further online events like that might help to have more face-to-face interaction, as it were, albeit through this sort of medium, rather than requiring people to attend in person. What I would say, though, I think if this is a concern, you know, happy to go away and look at it and see what further proposals we can come up with. You know, there's Friday's meeting, there's the meeting on the 1st of November before the consultation actually goes live. So if this is a concern of members overall in terms of how we engage with the older age group, I'm happy to take that away as an action and discuss that with our communications team and come back with a revised proposal on the 1st of November if that's helpful, rather than try and come up with specific proposals on the hoof today. Thank you,
Chair. Can I come back very quickly? I'm not concerned about the communication going out. I'm reassured, as I said earlier. I'm concerned about the information coming back from people when I want them to be able to handwrite a letter into you or to type a letter, to print it off, just to make sure no one's excluded. That's what I'm asking for. Their response to you, Ed.
So I think a very useful exercise, Ed, might be just to have a look at the next report coming to the Exmouth Placemaking Committee, which shows the way in which we've managed to absorb through the latest consultation all sorts of contributions, you know, green ink on the back of envelopes, emails, everything from all ages. So the techniques are definitely there within the council to do it. But I would suggest that if you are happy to come back, having given it some thought, on the 1st of November, that's probably the best way ahead. I don't think we should be voting tonight that we're definitely going to do this in these towns, when the evidence probably will be that the turnout wasn't great last time. So anyway, Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Allen. I mean, I know perhaps turnout wasn't good 10 years ago, but everybody has to have the opportunity to comment. And I think once we've got this plan rolled out, I think that sort of local presentations might be the way forward. But one thing we have to bear in mind is that we do have to take notice of what people say in these consultations. I mean, too often in the past, we've had a plan and people have made comments and we've just gone, well, too bad, that's what we're going to do. You know, it doesn't work quite like that. And people are becoming more vociferous about the way they want to see their neighbourhood developing. And I think, you know, even down to the point of maybe having parish meetings or some sort of local meeting involving several parishes at a time. I just think that what Ed has done it has to be applauded. I mean, that's fantastic. Getting local younger people on board is great. I'm an old person, but I mean, you know, I can still use the internet and so on. But at the end of the day, we are still planning a future for all of the people in the district, and I think we have to be very careful we do that. That's the only point I wish to make. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm just looking for members outside of Cabinet. Councillor Rowland, please. Outside of strategic planning. Sorry, Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, as I'm not a member. And I should declare that I don't have any interest to declare either. I must admit, I get a little bit tired about this ageism aspect of the discussion, because you can find in all different ages of the community, people that don't necessarily have access to the internet or technology. I definitely, like Councillor Lawrence just said, put myself in the older age bracket, being 72 now. But just to give you an example as well, my mother will be 90 years old next week, and she uses the internet extensively to take part in consultations and to do her online shopping, etc. And to upgrade her laptop for her 90th birthday, I've actually just bought her an iPad. She doesn't know that yet. And I don't think she's such an exception these days. So I actually get rather tired of hearing these things about just because you're in a certain age group that you're not necessarily able to use the latest technology. So, as I said, I think in all age groups there are problems with that. And of course, we've got to reach out and do this consultation as widely as possible. But we all know from attending our own parish town meetings as well, that the attendance from the general public is generally poor anyway, unless there tends to be a really contentious planning application on the agenda when those people that are affected by it do tend to turn out. So I just wanted to make that point anyway, that I think we need to be very careful not to make these broad brush generalised statements just based on age. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Happy birthday to Mrs. Rowland, and lucky her. What a great gift. What a lovely son you are. Councillor, staying outside of strategic planning, Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just hope that Jack's mother is not watching this, because spoil the surprise. But
don't worry, Jeff. She lives up in Lincolnshire, so
yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah,
she got better things to do, Jeff.
Yeah, using any way to engage with the younger people. That's a brilliant idea. You go to these meetings, and generally they are of people of my age. We don't seem to engage with the younger people. For my part, I'll be organising drop-in sessions through my two parish councils that I represent. They seem to work really well. With people coming in, talking with others, being explained on a map on a board where the planning application is going to be. That they always seem to be far better than, say, a set meeting with a chair, and generally the loudest people get their views over, and most of the audience seem to be as really quiet. So I think we need to be engaging with the parish councils. Now, all of us as district councillors should be engaging with the parish councils, working with the planning team to be able to present drop-in sessions. Now, maybe over a cup of tea as well. That always helps to get people in. Offer a couple of biscuits, and we can talk to the people one-on-one, and for my part, we've already had meetings at Lympston and Woodbury, and the other two villages in Woodbury Parish. So, and they've worked really well, and we'll be doing exactly the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. We'll just come back out of Strategic Planning Committee to Councillor Miller again, please.
Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. And sorry for getting exercised about this, but I met a 90-year-old man the other day on a planning issue, showed me his war medals, but he was one of the people that don't have access to the internet. Councillor Rowland's absolutely right, in the sense that, it is ageist to say that all elderly people can't use the internet. That's not true. But there are some that can't. And also there are younger people that might want to, including myself, that actually like to attend a face-to-face I mean, one meeting per town for a local plan that's going to have quite a significant impact on our communities. I don't think it's much to ask. And I think it enhances the consultation process. And I feel that the reason I'm going back in again is because I feel really passionately about the fact there should be that that face-to-face option. And I don't, and I guess the new point I'm trying to make, or would like to make, is that I don't really care if 5 years ago the turnout was poor. I don't think it matters. I mean, because how was it advertised? I would argue. We have no information on that. And I personally think we should be offering both an online webinar and a face-to-face one. And if it's a low turnout, then fair enough. But if there are 20 people that attend, those 20 people might not have actually been able to have learned or engaged in the process in any other way. So it is digital exclusion not to offer something face-to-face, in my opinion. I do agree with what Councillor Ingham said in that respect, but that's not to generalise at all. I just think, I don't think we need to go away, or this committee needs to go away and gather more evidence. I think it needs to decide in this meeting, through a proposal that I think Councillor Allen's already made, that there would be a commitment to a town by town, just one meeting. This is going to shape where the development is going in the district. This is significant. This is a significant consultation. I do not understand why this would be a huge drain on officer resources versus the democratic benefit of doing so. Thank you, Chair.
So yeah, Councillor, point taken, and Councillor Allen's point taken. But the point is, what we need is a report to the November the 1st meeting, because the resource implications, if we're looking at every town, are huge. They're absolutely huge within the timescale. I mean, I'm just trying to work out how many towns. Well, if I come back to you, Councillor, how many towns are there? What are we looking at? 8, 10? I don't know.
7 times.
So 7 towns where there's some pretty hefty.
And then you've got all the villages.
Perhaps, so you invite me back, perhaps we could have a compromise situation. You've got clusters of towns, such as, Exmouth is obviously the biggest town, but you have Budley and is a town, but I think people from Budley would be very happy to travel to the Ocean Building, for example, for a presentation. We don't have to do it in every single town, but perhaps if there could, sorry, Chair, I do agree with you. There should be a report that lays out the resourcing implications. Of course there should. But what I did say was agree it in principle. I think it's important to agree that in principle.
Yeah.
We want to do.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's best. Oh, by the way, before I start on this, I suppose I ought to declare an interest. I'm an oldie, but the communication methods is set out. I've got no problem with them, fine. But long as we do take into account that hard copies of the consultation document should be made available. And I think one of the best ways of dealing with it is let's leave this to the town and parish councils, because they know their communities, they know the issues that are around their districts. And long as the East Devon District Council are prepared to accept photocopies of those hard copies of the consultation paper, then I can see no problem with the town councils and parish councils distributing copies to people who come in and ask for them. And also they can have meetings, and I'm sure some of them are already going to be doing that, because there's so many different issues in these towns and parish councils. So overall, I'm quite happy with that. But if that's possible, Ed, I would like to see some distribution to the parish and town councils. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pratt. I'll ask Ed back on all this in a minute. That seems like a rather good idea. Councillor Davey, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I certainly echo what Councillor Rowland said about us digital oldies. And certainly I don't want to make assumptions about older people or younger people for that matter. But this report is mainly concerned with the fact that we had an online consultation, which was mainly participated in by older people. And so this is an attempt to reach out and engage the young through the platforms that they generally like to engage through. Whether it will be successful, I don't know, because I think sometimes just young people are not that engaged. They're often engaged on issues like climate change, the really big issues. What's happening in their local community may not be. However, I've just had a quick look at Commonplace, by the way, and if you want to look them up, if you look up Commonplace consultations, something like that, you can find their website, and they do have samples on their website of councils who are using their product. And I noticed they've also received a number of awards for their software. So well done to officers for finding that resource. And I think if we're going to use an online platform, that is a very good one to use. And it certainly worked very well on my mobile phone. Yes, I do use one. I appreciate the drain on officer resources and the fact that they simply haven't got the resources to facilitate lots of face-to-face meetings. But I wonder if I could suggest a compromise if councillors set up those meetings, perhaps by getting together as a group of ward councillors or parish councillors and hold an event. Then could we just have some help perhaps with the cost of venues, because I can imagine in Exmouth we'd use the Ocean, and perhaps ask to be supplied with some resources like large-scale maps. I can't print A3 or A2, I can only print A4, so some help with maps and perhaps consultation documents would be useful. Just be good to know if Ed thinks perhaps we could resource that if we asked for it. I did go to a one-day consultation on the Devoncourt proposals, which are coming up at planning at some point, I'm sure. And there was quite a lot of engagement there, a surprising number of people dropping in throughout the afternoon. I think it was only a couple of hours, in fact. It was sort of 4 till 6, so it did enable people who were working to possibly drop in on their way home. And there was quite a lot of engagement there. Again, it was more my age group, but at least it is face-to-face. And if we can do it without being resource intensive on our officers, then I would appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davey. Councillor Howell, please.
Thank you, and I'm appreciative to Mr. Freeman for his offer to look at it. So I support the idea of looking at this. I need to come at it at a slightly different angle, and again, I need to look at my own ward in particular. And I'm thinking most of the towns aren't getting much development in this new local plan. So although they'd be interested in it, I'm more concerned about the likes of Axminster, Ottery St Mary, Fennerton, Wimpole and Cliff St Mary, who are quite honestly inundated with development in these local plans. And if we're going to do public consultation, I would suggest that's our limit of our public consultation, are those communities that are so affected. Because let's face it, that's the one where the interest is the most. Now, that's not denigrating the likes of Exmouth or any other place. And I think actually Ollie's plans would be absolutely brilliant, because you've got a good class of councillors down there that together could possibly gang together in a room of the Ocean and support each other. But as you get more out into the district and the wards, you know, I'm thinking of myself, Councillor Lawrence, etc. We're on our own anyway, where the development proposals are high for our communities, and having an officer alongside a councillor in those locations, I think would make a big difference if it can be done. And those are the words I'd use carefully. So I would like to throw that at Mr. Freeman as a slightly sideways thing. Other than that, I agree with Mr. Rowland, Councillor Rowland. But social inclusion is across the piece. So it's how we handle those things. And, you know, but otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed, I'm saving you to the best till last. So we've got two more, Councillor Skinner and Councillor Allen. Councillor Skinner, please.
Thank you. And Mr. Councillor Davey suggested something. And what I would suggest is that I think there's 67 parishes, if I'm correct. We can't go around 67 parishes, obviously, but you touched on something, or one of the members touched on something earlier, was that as ward members, I've got 4 parishes in my ward, and I think it should be incumbent on myself to organise a meeting for all of those 4 parishes to come together, and we can have one, I don't know, day or one evening or whatever it may be, talking about what the issues are around the plan. Because the only thing I think about what Councillor Howe was just saying, I sort of get what he was saying regarding those that are taking the most out of this, but there's more issues than just housing. There's also employment land, there's open space and all the rest of it. And it is a plan for all of East Devon. And I would be quite happy for a sort of a road show, or whatever you would call these. I think they called it a road show last time. They went on the road show and went around villages. But I think it is incumbent, Chair, that members, take on that mantle and pull their wards together. I mean, I would need one in each village. I'd just one for all 4 villages for me would cut it, and they can come along. And those that come, I pick a village or whatever it's in the middle roughly, and they go from there. If they turn up, they turn up. But at least we'll have done our job, Chair. That's the point. We need to make sure that we did go out to consultation. We did our utmost. And we got there, so I'm quite happy with that. The ages thing, I think what Ed's proposing is quite fine for me. I'm quite happy with that. But that's a suggestion from me, that I think the wards, some members can pull together and pull their wards together, and that would limit the number of visits, shall we say? Thank you.
Okay. Again, just before we come back to Ed to try and sort of roll this all up, Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't for one instant deprecate the excellent suggestions that Ed had put forward for online consultation and the various methods he's put forward. I think it was great. I do note, however, that there was a suggestion about involving school and college engagements. And so in each of these cases, my concern is that officers don't get overloaded, but on the other hand, we do a good job of consultation so that democratically we're doing the best job possible. And if we have councillors getting together and organising these meetings without officers present, then I think that we might get a more partial view being put across to constituents, which I think that's normal behaviour. But that's why I said that in the 7 towns, and Mike Howe is incorrect, there's quite a lot of activity going into Honiton. It would be really advisable for each of the 7 towns to have one night where people can come and ask questions and discuss what those plans are. And that's not a huge commitment. I know evening work is hard, but on the other hand, if you want to get this consultation right, and you really want democratic involvement, rather than any token involvement, which I don't believe we do, I think we want proper consultation, and that's why we're extending it to social media so much. But I do think we need face-to-face, one per town. It's not going to be so arduous as seems to be presented compared to all the other things that Ed's presented. It's just one set of meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all members. So, again, Ed, apologies, we've got off your report, but we've opened up another flank. Can you help us with that at all?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think the first thing to say, to pick up on a couple of points, clearly we can provide, paper copies of the consultation materials to town councils. And clearly, if I think we would want to encourage people to respond electronically to the consultation through the consultation software, but I'm sure whatever we do, we will inevitably receive some responses in writing and by email, and quite happy to accept those and leave that option open if that's members' wish. I would also say, in terms of, I think it was Councillor Lawrence said about responding to consultations, what we will do on the back of the consultation responses is produce a sort of "you said, we did" type document to summarise the consultation responses that we've had and how we propose to respond to them. That is something that we were proposing to do anyway. So that would come to Strategic Planning Committee first quarter of next year with those responses and how we propose to deal with them, so that there is that audit trail of what's happened to them, and ensure that we can demonstrate that we have listened to the comments that we've received and responded to them. I think there was a suggestion, I think it was Councillor Davies said about councillors sort of leading these events. Certainly we can provide resources to help with that. I know we did, I think Councillor Young will agree to the events he hosted, I think in Woodbury and Limpston. We provided big scale maps and other materials there to those events, and we could certainly do similar for anybody else who wants to host a similar event in their area. I suppose my only concern with something being led by members is any technical questions you might get, and whether or not you need officer support there, whether we can do that through some kind of list of frequently asked questions and some answers that officers have provided as a sort of supplemental information to help members to answer some of the more technical issues that might get raised. I'd have to look into that. I think this is coming back to my suggestion of a further report on this. The other thing I think got raised is sort of whether this is a targeted approach or whether it's all or nothing. I would say certainly in terms of resourcing, I can't see that we can go to every town and parish in the district. There are simply too many. We don't have the resources to do that. I think conceivably we could potentially go to the towns, but we need to look at how that's done and on what basis. I think if we were doing that, possibly, I think there was some talk about drop-in sessions versus, I mean, I guess another option would be to attend a town or parish council meeting and just be there to answer questions at that forum, maybe another way forward. But I think if it's a targeted approach, to my mind, it would logically be the towns. But I hear what Councillor Howe says about large-scale growth in some other areas, so we'd have to have a methodology to understand why we're going to particular areas and not others, I think. And at this stage, that's slightly difficult because decisions haven't been made, for example, about the scale of growth we're consulting on in places like Fennerton and Wimpole, for example. So I think it's difficult to decide what the targeted approach would be at this stage. That might be easier after Friday's meeting, when the draft plan has been considered and perhaps some of those matters have been considered in further detail by the committee. So I think happy to hear members' views, and obviously I think there was a motion about the principle of meetings at the towns. So certainly if that's the case, happy to come back on the 1st of November with a more detailed proposal as to how we could potentially do that for members to consider in further detail. But as you say, Chair, the resource implications need to be considered in all of this. I think potentially the 7 towns is doable. All of the town and parish is definitely not doable. Somewhere in between, I'd have to go away and think about it. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Ed. That seems extremely sensible way ahead. Councillor, I'm happy to come out of committee to Councillor Faithful, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought about having these at towns rather than all the parishes. Town councils, I don't know if it still works, they used to deal with the papers, hold the documents for the surrounding parishes. So if you work to that principle, I would have thought, like if we did Rockbeer and Wimpole or whatever at Ottery, then you have them at the consultation in Ottery Institute or wherever, and do the same across the different towns, so that you have the consultation for all the surrounding villages. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Faithful. And finally, Councillor Skinner.
Thanks, Chair. And just a quickie, and it's just to say that I was envisaging when I talked about the roadshow of officer participation in that, what I was trying to do was try to pull several parishes together within the ward, so whatever that ward would be, that they can pull together on that basis. That was my thinking. No more than that, but that's all for food for thought for Ed. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Right. Okay. So Damien, if you're with us, I'm sure you are. Can you remind us of the
yes.
Okay. Can you take us through the recommendation and the vote then, please?
Well, to be honest with you, Chair, at the moment, I'm not quite sure what the recommendation is, because I don't think I've got that each of the 7 towns should be given an evening presentation.
Oh, I don't know, Damien. We're not doing that. So that will come. That debate will flow from the reports for November the 1st that Ed will do. So basically, we're just looking at the recommendation that we've got on for tonight. So we've
because I mean that one at the moment just says that members note the ideas presented in this report and agree that the proposed consultation methods set out in the report form the basis of the engagement for the draft local plan consultation. So it doesn't stop, other things being added in the future, but it does form the basis. So happy with that as the motion.
Well, I think since Ed's given a pledge to bring a report on the 1st, I'm happy with that. If other members are as well, do shout. If you're not, happy to listen.
So was somebody? Are you proposing that then, Chair, yourself as a recommendation? Because we haven't actually got.
At the same time, I might as well. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so on that basis, then we can take the vote on that members note the ideas presented in this report and agree that the proposed consultation methods set out in the report form the basis of engagement for the draft local plan consultation. So if I can ask members then to press your green tick if you're in support of the recommendation, press your red cross if you're against the recommendation, and raise your electronic hand if you are indicating that you're abstaining from the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I can confirm that's 8 votes in support, so that's carried. No abstentions, no votes against.
Thank you very much. Members, can I thank you very much, very sincerely today for all of your input on these items. We've come in with some excellent reports and you've added some fantastic ideas that we can act on. So that's been really helpful. Thank you so much for that today. That now brings us to the end of today's meeting. And if I can remind you that until you've been told that we're no longer on air, any comments you make can still be heard. Other than that, thank you very much to members of the public watching, and good afternoon.